Lucas Reed stood in the marble lobby of Hale and Associates, rain dripping from his janitorial uniform onto polished floors worth more than his entire year's salary. Across from him sat his ex-wife Vanessa, immaculate in designer clothes, flanked by attorneys who cost more per hour than Lucas made in a week. She slid a document across the mahogany table with one perfectly manicured nail. $50,000, Lucas. Or I take Emma. The words hit like a physical blow. Outside, lightning cracked across the Chicago skyline. Inside, Lucas felt his world ending. He was about to lose his daughter to a woman who'd abandoned them both, unless he could find money he'd never have. Before we begin this journey together, I invite you to stay until the end of this story. If it moves you, please hit the like button and comment with your city so I can see how far Lucas's story reaches across the world. The fluorescent lights in the 23rd floor conference room hummed with the kind of sterile efficiency that Lucas Reed had come to associate with places where people like him didn't belong. He sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than his monthly rent, acutely aware that his worn canvas jacket, the one with the small tear near the left pocket that he kept meaning to sew, stood out like a stain against the pristine corporate backdrop of Hale and Associates. Vanessa sat across from him, and Lucas found himself momentarily transported back 7 years to when she used to smile at him like he mattered. That woman was gone. The person before him now was someone else entirely, someone carved from ice and ambition, someone who wore her success like armor and wielded it like a weapon. "You're late," Vanessa said, not looking up from her phone. Her voice carried that particular tone of disappointment she'd perfected during their marriage, the one that made Lucas feel about 3 inches tall. "The bus was delayed," Lucas said quietly. "Accident on Michigan Avenue." The bus? Vanessa finally looked at him, and Lucas saw something flicker in her eyes. Not quite pity, but close. Disdain, maybe. "Lucas, do you know what the parking fee is in this building? It's more than your bus fare." Richard Pemberton, Vanessa's lead attorney, cleared his throat. He was a man in his 50s with silver hair and a suit that screamed old money. "Perhaps we should begin. I'm sure Mr. Reed has to get to work." The way he said work made it sound like a hobby, something quaint and ultimately meaningless. Lucas's hands tightened on the armrests. "I came because you said it was about Emma." "It is about Emma," Vanessa said, finally setting down her phone. "It's about what's best for our daughter." "Our daughter?" The words came out sharper than Lucas intended. "Vanessa, you haven't seen her in 8 months. Not since her birthday, and you left that party early to take a call from Hong Kong. I've been building a career, Lucas, creating stability, something you might understand if you had any ambition beyond mopping floors." The words landed like slaps, each one precisely aimed. Lucas felt heat rise up his neck, but he forced himself to breathe slowly. Getting angry was what she wanted. Vanessa had always been good at pushing buttons, at finding the exact words that would make him lose his composure so she could point to it later as evidence of his inadequacy. "I'm providing for my daughter," Lucas said evenly. "She has food, a home, clean clothes, a studio apartment in Pilsen," Vanessa interrupted, sliding a folder across the table. 800 square feet. One bathroom that doesn't even have a door, just a curtain. Emma sleeps on a pull-out sofa because there's no bedroom. Lucas, there are college dorm rooms with more space." Richard Pemberton pulled out his own documents, spreading them across the table with practiced efficiency. "Mr. Reed, my client is prepared to offer you a very generous arrangement. Ms. Hale will assume primary custody of Emma. You'll have supervised visitation every other weekend." "Supervised?" Lucas's voice cracked. "I've raised Emma by myself for 3 years. I make her breakfast every morning. I help with her homework. I'm the one who sits up with her when she has nightmares about—" He stopped himself, but not before Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "About what, Lucas? About her mother leaving? Is that what you tell her? That I abandoned you both?" "I don't tell her anything except that you're busy, that you love her but your job takes you places. I don't—" Lucas rubbed his face, suddenly exhausted. It was 3 p.m., and he'd been up since 5 that morning, getting Emma ready for school before his shift at the hospital cafeteria. He had another shift tonight, cleaning the downtown office buildings, and he was already running on 4 hours of sleep. "I don't poison her against you, Vanessa, even though I what? Left a dead-end marriage? Refuse to spend my life watching you settle for mediocrity? Vanessa leaned forward, and Lucas saw something dangerous in her expression. I gave you chances, Lucas. When we were married, I begged you to go back to school, to finish your engineering degree. You had 2 semesters left, 2, but you were too proud to let me pay for it, too comfortable in your little maintenance job. Emma was 6 months old. You were traveling for work constantly. Someone had to actually raise our daughter. So you gave up. Vanessa's voice was cold. You gave up on your education, your career, your future. And now you want to drag Emma down with you into your cycle of poverty and low expectations. The room fell silent except for the quiet hum of the air conditioning. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Lucas could see the Chicago skyline stretching out in all directions. Towers of glass and steel, monuments to ambition and success. Somewhere down there, in a classroom at Sandburg Elementary, Emma was probably in math class, maybe raising her hand to answer a question because she loved math, loved the way numbers fit together in patterns. She wanted to be an astronaut. She had a poster of Mae Jemison above her bed, well, above the sofa that converted into her bed, and she knew the names of all the planets, including the dwarf planets that most kids had never heard of. I'm not dragging her anywhere, Lucas said quietly. I'm giving her a life. A real one. With someone who shows up every single day. Someone who knows she doesn't like carrots but loves them if they're roasted. Someone who knows she needs exactly 3 bedtime stories and a glass of water. Not 2 glasses because she's stalling, but one that she actually drinks. Someone who knows that when she's quiet, really quiet, it means she's sad about something and needs to talk but doesn't know how to start. For just a moment, something shifted in Vanessa's expression. But then Richard Pemberton coughed lightly, and whatever Lucas had glimpsed disappeared behind her professional mask. Very touching, Richard said, his tone making it clear he found it anything but. However, emotional appeals aside, we need to discuss the practical realities. Ms. Hale earns approximately $400,000 annually as a senior vice president at Morrison Dynamics. She has a 3-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park with a dedicated room for Emma, complete with a private bathroom and study area. She can provide private tutoring, music lessons, language instruction. Emma doesn't want music lessons, Lucas said. She wants someone to help her build the model solar system she's been saving her allowance for. Mr. Reed, Richard continued, as if Lucas hadn't spoken, Ms. Hale is prepared to offer Emma opportunities you simply cannot match. The question is whether you love your daughter enough to recognize that. The manipulation was so obvious, so transparently calculated, that Lucas almost laughed. Almost. But there was nothing funny about the way Vanessa was watching him, her expression carefully neutral, as if they were negotiating a business contract instead of talking about their daughter's life. I'm not agreeing to supervised visitation, Lucas said. Emma needs me. Actually, Vanessa interrupted, pulling out another document. We need to discuss something else first. She slid the paper across to Lucas. We believe it's in Emma's best interest if you sign over your parental rights voluntarily. The words didn't make sense at first. Lucas stared at the document, at the legal language that blurred in front of his eyes. You want me to give her up? We want you to recognize reality, Richard said. You work 2 jobs to barely make ends meet. You live in a substandard apartment in a neighborhood with one of the highest crime rates in Chicago. You have no health insurance, no retirement savings, no college fund for Emma. Ms. Hale can provide all of these things and more. She can't provide a father who loves her. She has a stepfather who can fill that role, Vanessa said quietly. Andrew has already expressed interest in adoption. The room seemed to tilt. Andrew, your boyfriend of what, 6 months? Fiancé, Vanessa corrected, holding up her left hand to show a diamond that caught the light and threw rainbows across the conference table. We're getting married in June. Andrew is a partner at his firm. He went to Yale. He plays tennis with senators. He can give Emma the kind of life she deserves. Lucas felt something crack inside his chest. He thought of Emma that morning, how she'd hugged him tight before school and whispered, "I love you, Daddy," in his ear. How she'd drawn him a picture of the 2 of them holding hands under a smiling sun. How she'd asked him last night, in that small voice she used when she was afraid, whether Mommy was going to take her away. He'd lied. He'd told her everything would be fine, that he'd never let anyone separate them. And now here was Vanessa, offering him a pen and a line to sign that would make him a liar forever. "No," Lucas said. "Lucas, be reasonable." "No." He stood up, his chair scraping against the polished floor. "I'm not signing anything. Emma is my daughter. I've raised her. I've been there for every scraped knee, every bad dream, every parent-teacher conference. You don't get to waltz back into her life because it's suddenly convenient for your new perfect family." Vanessa's expression hardened. "Then you leave me no choice." She nodded to Richard, who pulled out yet another document. How many had they prepared? And placed it in front of Lucas. "This is a formal custody petition," Richard said. "Ms. Hale is filing for full custody based on your inability to provide adequate care. We have documentation of your financial instability, the substandard living conditions, your exhausting work schedule that leaves Emma with babysitters more often than with you. Mrs. Chen lives in our building. She's a retired teacher who loves Emma. She's not just a babysitter, she's an 82-year-old woman with no legal certification for childcare," Richard interrupted. "Mr. Reed, we also have testimony from Emma's school indicating she sometimes arrives in clothes that aren't quite clean, that her homework is occasionally incomplete, that she falls asleep in class." "That was one time," Lucas said, his voice rising despite his efforts to stay calm. "She had a stomach bug the night before. I kept her home, but she insisted on going to school because they were learning about planets and she didn't want to miss it. She was tired from being up sick all night, not because I'm neglecting her." "The school records tell a different story," Vanessa said. "Multiple instances of tardiness, missed parent involvement events, insufficient funds in her lunch account. I paid that lunch account debt. It was a mix-up with my paycheck deposit, and it was resolved in 2 days." "The point," Richard said, his voice taking on that patient tone people used when explaining things to children, "is that Ms. Hale can provide stability, consistency, a life where Emma doesn't have to worry about whether there's enough money for lunch, or whether her father is too exhausted from working 2 jobs to help with her homework." Lucas looked at Vanessa, really looked at her, searching for any trace of the woman he'd once loved, the woman who'd cried when Emma was born, who'd held their daughter and whispered promises about always being there. But that woman might as well have been a ghost. "Why?" Lucas asked quietly. "Why now? You haven't wanted to be a mother for 3 years. You left us, Vanessa. You chose your career, and that was fine. I never tried to stop you. But Emma and I built a life together. We're happy. You're poor," Vanessa said bluntly. "And Emma deserves better than to grow up watching her father struggle. I'm offering you a way out, Lucas. A way to give her everything she needs." "She needs me. She needs opportunity, education, experiences. Do you know Andrew's company has a scholarship program? Emma could attend any college she wants, completely paid for. She could study abroad, learn languages, travel the world." Vanessa's voice softened slightly. "I know you love her, Lucas. I do. But love isn't enough when you can't provide the basics. I provide everything she needs, but not everything she deserves." Vanessa stood now too, moving around the table until she was close enough that Lucas could smell her perfume, something expensive and unfamiliar. "Be honest with yourself. How long can you keep this up? Working yourself to death? Barely scraping by? What happens when you get sick? When you can't work? Emma has no safety net except you, and you're one accident, one illness, one missed paycheck away from disaster." The worst part was that she was right. Lucas lived in constant fear of exactly that scenario. He had $347 in his savings account. That was it. That was everything standing between Emma and catastrophe if something went wrong. And things went wrong all the time when you were poor. Broken water heaters, unexpected car repairs, emergency room visits that insurance didn't fully cover. Just last month, Emma had twisted her ankle at recess. The school nurse said she should see a doctor. Lucas had spent 3 hours in an urgent care waiting room, watching the bill climb with every minute, praying it wasn't broken because he couldn't afford a cast and the follow-up appointments and the physical therapy. It had been a bad sprain. The doctor wrapped it and gave him instructions for ice and elevation. The bill was $420, and Lucas was still making payments on it. Vanessa saw the hesitation in his face. She always had been good at reading him. "I'm not trying to hurt you," she said, and for just a second she sounded almost genuine. I'm trying to help Emma. And you too, if you'd let me. Lucas, you don't have to do this alone anymore. Let Andrew and me give Emma stability. You can still see her. We're not trying to erase you from her life. Just reduce me to every other weekend. Supervised visits like I'm dangerous. We can discuss the supervision requirement once you've established more stable living conditions, Richard interjected. Ms. Hale is willing to be flexible on that point. Lucas laughed, but there was no humor in it. How generous. Lucas, Vanessa's voice sharpened again. I'm trying to do this the easy way, but I'm prepared to fight if necessary, and we both know how that will end. I have resources you can't match. I have lawyers. I have character witnesses. I have documentation of every way your life isn't good enough for our daughter. And what do you have besides money? Lucas asked. When's Emma's birthday, Vanessa? She blinked. September. What day? A pause. The 15th. The 13th. When's her bedtime? 8 o'clock, probably. 7:30 on school nights, 8 on weekends, but she's allowed to read for half an hour after lights out. What's her favorite food? Vanessa's jaw tightened. This is childish. Mac and cheese with the shaped noodles, but only the dinosaur shapes, not the regular ones. What's her teacher's name? I don't see how... Mrs. Patterson. What's she afraid of? Lucas, stop. The dark. But only sometimes. She's fine if she has her nightlight and her stuffed elephant. The elephant's name is Dr. Peanuts, and she's had him since she was 2 months old. He used to be tan, but he's kind of gray now from being washed so many times, and his left eye is loose. Lucas felt his voice starting to shake, but he couldn't stop. She ties his trunk in a knot when she's worried about something. She won't tell you what's wrong, but if you see Dr. Peanuts' trunk in a knot, you know to ask gentle questions and wait. She'll tell you when she's ready. The silence that followed was heavy. Vanessa's expression had gone carefully blank, but Lucas saw her throat work as she swallowed. None of that matters in court, Richard said quietly. Sentiment doesn't outweigh financial stability and quality of life measurements. It should, Lucas said. It should matter that I know my daughter, that I'm there, that I show up every single day, even when I'm exhausted, even when I'm scared I can't pay the rent, even when I... His voice broke. He pressed his palms against his eyes, fighting back the tears that threatened to fall. He would not cry in front of them. He would not give them that. Mr. Reed, Richard said, and now his voice held something that might have been sympathy, though Lucas doubted it was genuine. You clearly love your daughter. No one is disputing that. But love doesn't pay for college. It doesn't provide health insurance or a safe neighborhood or opportunities for advancement. Ms. Hale is offering Emma a chance at a better life. At what cost? Lucas asked. What does it cost her to lose the parent who's actually been there? She's not losing you, Vanessa said. She's gaining a complete family, a stable home, a future without financial stress. Lucas looked down at the documents spread across the table. The custody petition, the supervised visitation agreement, the voluntary termination of parental rights. Each one was a door closing, a future being written in legal language and corporate letterhead. I need to think about this, he said, finally. You have until Monday, Richard said. If you refuse to sign the voluntary agreement, Ms. Hale will proceed with the custody petition. I should warn you, Mr. Reed, that custody battles can be expensive. Do you have an attorney? Lucas thought of his bank account, his credit cards that were already maxed out from Christmas presents, and Emma's new winter coat because she'd grown out of the old one. He couldn't afford an attorney. He couldn't afford the filing fees. He couldn't afford any of this. I'll find one, he said, hating how weak his voice sounded. Lucas! Vanessa touched his arm, and he jerked away from her. She pulled back, something flickering across her face that might have been hurt. This doesn't have to be adversarial. We both want what's best for Emma. Let's try to work together. You're trying to take my daughter away from me. I'm trying to give her opportunities you can't. Vanessa picked up her phone, signaling that as far as she was concerned, this meeting was over. Think about it over the weekend. Really think about what's best for her, not what's best for your pride. This isn't about pride, Lucas said, but Vanessa was already walking toward the door. Richard gathered up the documents, leaving only one folder on the table, the one marked voluntary termination. The message was clear. Mr. Reed, A word of advice, Richard said, his voice low enough that Vanessa, already in the hallway, wouldn't hear. Ms. Hale will win this. She has too many advantages. The only question is how much damage is done in the process. Think about what a custody battle would do to Emma. Think about having her questioned by court-appointed psychologists, having her life picked apart in front of a judge. Is your pride worth putting her through that? This isn't about pride, Lucas repeated, but Richard was already following Vanessa out the door. Lucas stood alone in the conference room, surrounded by leather and mahogany and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out on a city full of people who belonged in rooms like this. People who could afford attorneys and filing fees and three-bedroom apartments in Lincoln Park. He picked up the folder marked Voluntary Termination and opened it. The language was dense, full of wherefores and heretofores, but the meaning was clear enough. If he signed this, he would no longer be Emma's father in any legal sense. He'd be a stranger who got to visit sometimes, supervised, until even that faded away, and he became just a name she used to know. Lucas closed the folder and walked out. The elevator ride down 23 floors felt like falling. Lucas watched the numbers descend, each one a reminder of how far up he'd been, how far removed from his actual life. The elevator was empty except for him and his reflection in the polished brass doors. A 32-year-old man in a cheap jacket and worn jeans, hair that needed cutting, exhaustion written into every line of his face. He looked like what he was, someone who didn't belong. The lobby of Hale & Associates was all marble and modern art, glass sculptures that probably cost more than Emma's entire education would. A security guard nodded at Lucas as he passed, and Lucas wondered if the man could tell just by looking at him that he'd come here to be told he wasn't good enough for his own daughter. Outside, the November wind hit him like a slap. Chicago in winter was brutal, and this year was shaping up to be particularly harsh. Lucas had already started collecting blankets from thrift stores because their apartment's heating was inadequate and the landlord was slow to fix things. He stood on the sidewalk, letting the cold seep through his jacket, and tried to figure out what to do next. He had 2 hours before he needed to pick up Emma from Mrs. Chen's apartment. 2 hours to somehow process the fact that his ex-wife wanted to erase him from his daughter's life. The sky opened up without warning, rain pouring down in sheets that soaked through Lucas's jacket in seconds. Of course it would rain. He didn't have an umbrella. He'd left it at home because the morning had been clear, and the nearest bus stop was 3 blocks away. Lucas started walking, rain streaming down his face, mixing with tears he hadn't realized he was crying. People rushed past him, huddled under umbrellas and ducking into doorways, but Lucas just walked. He needed to move, needed to do something with the energy that felt like it was going to tear him apart from the inside. How was he supposed to tell Emma? How could he look at his daughter and explain that her mother wanted to take her away? That despite everything Lucas had done, everything he'd sacrificed, it might not be enough. He thought about the morning, about how Emma had insisted on making him breakfast even though she'd burned the toast and spilled orange juice on the counter. She'd been so proud, presenting him with blackened bread and scrambled eggs that were somehow both runny and overcooked. Lucas had eaten every bite and told her it was delicious, because he saw how carefully she'd set the table with their mismatched plates and the napkins she'd folded into triangles. He thought about last Thursday, when Emma had won the spelling bee at school. Lucas had been there, sitting in the back of the cafeteria in his work clothes because he'd come straight from his morning shift. He'd cheered louder than anyone when Emma spelled phenomenon correctly, and afterward she'd run to him instead of to the teacher handing out ribbons. She'd hugged him tight and said, "Did you see me, Daddy? Did you see?" He'd seen. He saw everything, every triumph, every struggle, every moment of her growing up. How could Vanessa think money was more important than that? But even as Lucas asked himself the question, he knew the answer. Because money meant security, safety, options. All the things he couldn't provide, no matter how much he loved his daughter. Lucas found himself on Michigan Avenue, rain still pouring, completely soaked through now. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Probably Mrs. Chen wondering if he was going to be late picking up Emma. He needed to get to the bus stop. He needed to go home and figure out how to afford an attorney and how to fight a battle he was almost certain to lose. But for just a moment, Lucas stood in the rain and let himself feel the full weight of his fear. Let himself imagine what it would be like to lose Emma. to see her every other weekend, if he was lucky, to watch her grow up from a distance, to become a stranger in her life, while Andrew, a man who'd known her for 6 months, became dad. The rain began to ease, and Lucas finally started moving again. The bus stop was ahead, and through the water streaming down his face, he could see the covered shelter. A few people were already there, shaking out umbrellas and checking their phones. Lucas was about to cross the street when he heard it, the smooth, quiet purr of an expensive engine. A black limousine pulled up to the curb beside him, water spraying from its tires. The kind of car that belonged in this neighborhood, carrying people who belonged in rooms like the one Lucas had just left. The back window rolled down, and Lucas expected to be told to move along, that he was blocking someone's route. Instead, a voice called out his name. "Lucas Reed." It wasn't a question. The woman in the back of the limousine knew exactly who he was. Lucas bent down, squinting through the rain, trying to see into the car's darkened interior. The woman was in her early 60s, with steel-gray hair cut in a sharp bob, and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She wore a black suit that probably cost more than Lucas's monthly rent, and there was something in her expression, not pity, exactly, but recognition. "I'm sorry," Lucas said, confused. "Do I know you?" "Not yet," the woman replied. "But I know you. Get in the car, Lucas. We need to talk." Lucas glanced around, half convinced this was some kind of elaborate prank or possibly a hallucination brought on by stress and rain. I'm not sure. Your daughter is Emma Rose Reed. She's 7 years old. She wants to be an astronaut. Her favorite color is purple, but specifically the purple of nebulae and space photographs, not the purple of grapes or flowers. The woman leaned forward slightly. "You clean my offices every Tuesday and Thursday night. You've worked for my company for 2 years, and in that time you've never been late, never cut corners, never once failed to lock up properly or handle the security codes with anything but complete professionalism." Lucas's hand tightened on the wet folder he was still carrying. "I don't understand." "Get in the car," the woman repeated, "and I'll explain everything." Across the street, visible through the rain-blurred windows of a coffee shop, Vanessa stood with her phone pressed to her ear. She'd seen the limousine pull up. She'd seen Lucas standing in the rain, and now she was watching, her expression shifting from confusion to something that looked almost like fear. The woman in the limousine followed Lucas's gaze and smiled, a small, knowing smile that suggested she understood far more than she was saying. "That's your ex-wife, isn't it? Vanessa Hale, Senior Vice President at Morrison Dynamics. Very impressive resume." The woman's smile widened slightly. "I'm Margaret Sloan. I'm the CEO of Morrison Dynamics, which makes me your ex-wife's boss. And Lucas, I think it's time we discussed your future." The rain had stopped completely now, leaving behind only the drip of water from awnings and the hiss of tires on wet pavement. Lucas looked at Margaret Sloan at the open car door, at Vanessa watching from across the street with her phone frozen halfway to her ear. He thought about Emma, about the spelling bee, about burned toast, about Dr. Peanuts and his knotted trunk. He thought about everything he stood to lose and everything he'd already sacrificed. And then, still dripping wet, still clutching a folder full of documents meant to erase him from his daughter's life, Lucas Reed got into the limousine. The door closed with a soft, expensive click, and through the tinted window Lucas saw Vanessa step out of the coffee shop, her expression shifting from confusion to something close to panic. But the limousine was already pulling away from the curb, carrying Lucas toward a conversation that would change everything. The interior of the limousine was warm and impossibly quiet, the kind of silence that money bought, soundproofing so complete that the chaos of Chicago traffic disappeared the moment the door closed. Lucas sat on leather seats that seemed to mold themselves to his body, acutely aware that he was dripping rainwater onto carpet that probably cost more per square foot than his entire apartment. Margaret Sloan sat across from him, perfectly composed, studying him with an intensity that made Lucas want to squirm. She didn't speak immediately, just watched him with those sharp eyes that seemed to catalog every detail, his cheap jacket, his worn shoes, the folder he clutched like a life preserver. "You're wondering why I know who you are," Margaret said finally. It wasn't a question. "Among other things," Lucas managed. His voice sounded strange in the hushed interior of the car, too loud and too small at the same time. I make it my business to know the people who work for my company. All of them. Not just the ones on the executive floor. Margaret reached for a panel on the side of the car and pressed a button. A small compartment opened, revealing bottles of water and what looked like a stack of towels. She handed one to Lucas. "You're soaked through." Lucas took the towel automatically, too stunned to do anything but follow her lead. He dabbed at his face, his hair, but he was wet to the skin and a towel wasn't going to fix that. "I've been watching you for quite some time, Lucas," Margaret continued. 2 years and 3 months, to be precise. That's how long you've worked for Morrison Dynamics, though you probably don't think of it that way. You work for Premier Cleaning Services, which is contracted by Morrison. But I pay attention to who comes into my buildings, especially people who handle security access. I don't understand what this has to do with your ex-wife just tried to take your daughter away from you, Margaret interrupted smoothly. She offered you a choice between signing away your parental rights or facing a custody battle you can't afford to fight. Am I correct? Lucas's hands tightened on the towel. How did you... I saw you leave the building. I saw your face. And I know Vanessa Hale well enough to guess what kind of conversation you just had. Margaret's expression softened slightly. She's a brilliant strategist, your ex-wife. Ruthless, efficient, completely focused on objectives. Those qualities make her very good at her job. They make her a terrible mother. The words hung in the air between them. Lucas didn't know what to say. Part of him wanted to defend Vanessa. Old habits died hard, but everything Margaret said was true. Why are you telling me this? Lucas asked. Because 2 years ago, you did something that most people wouldn't have done. Do you remember the night of August 15th? Lucas searched his memory. 2 years ago, August. He'd been working at Morrison for only a few weeks then, still learning the building layouts, still nervous about making mistakes. I'm not sure. You found a laptop in conference room 7B, Margaret said. It had been left there after a late meeting. Most cleaning staff would have turned it in to building security and gone on with their night. You did more than that. You looked up the meeting schedule, figured out whose laptop it was, tracked down a phone number, and called to let them know where they could find it. You stayed an hour past your shift to make sure it was retrieved safely. Lucas remembered now. The laptop had belonged to someone named Dr. Patricia Chen. He remembered because he'd thought it was funny that she shared a last name with his neighbor. She'd been frantic on the phone, explaining that the laptop contained years of research data that hadn't been backed up yet. That was just common sense, Lucas said. The data was important. Common sense isn't that common, Margaret replied. Especially at midnight when you're exhausted and have another job to get to in the morning. Dr. Chen is one of our lead researchers in renewable energy storage. That laptop contained breakthrough algorithms that are now the basis for patents worth approximately $40 million. You saved her career that night, Lucas, possibly the entire research division. I didn't know it was that important. No, you didn't, which makes what you did even more remarkable. You didn't help because you knew there would be a reward. You helped because it was the right thing to do. Margaret leaned forward slightly. That's not the only incident. 3 months later, you noticed a water leak in the third-floor break room and reported it immediately, even though it meant filling out paperwork that kept you late. The leak was coming from a pipe that would have burst within a week if it hadn't been caught. It would have flooded our main server room. Lucas shifted uncomfortably. I just saw water where it shouldn't be. Last January, you found a security badge in the parking garage and didn't just turn it in. You noticed it belonged to someone who'd been laid off 2 weeks earlier. You reported it as a potential security risk. That badge had been stolen from the employee's car. Someone was planning to use it for industrial espionage. Your attention to that detail prevented a data breach that could have cost us millions. I don't understand what any of this has to do with Emma. Margaret sat back, studying him with those keen eyes. I've been in business for 40 years, Lucas. I've built Morrison Dynamics from a regional firm to a global corporation. In that time, I've learned to recognize character. Not the kind people put on for job interviews or networking events, but real character. The kind that shows up when no one important is watching, when there's no reward except the satisfaction of doing things right. The limousine turned a corner, and through the tinted windows, Lucas caught a glimpse of Morrison Dynamics' main tower, 60 stories of glass and steel reaching toward the gray sky. You have that kind of character, Margaret continued. I've watched you work for 2 years. I've seen how you treat people, the way you greet the night security guards by name, the way you leave notes when you notice something needs repair, even minor things that aren't your responsibility. Last month, you found a wallet in the lobby and tracked down its owner, a junior analyst who'd just started and couldn't afford to replace their driver's license and credit cards. You didn't ask for a reward. You didn't even mention it to anyone. The analyst told me about it because they were so impressed. Lucas felt heat rising in his face. I was just being decent. Exactly, Margaret said. You were being decent in a world where that's increasingly rare. And I've also seen how hard you work. 2 jobs. Raising a daughter alone. Never complaining, never cutting corners, never making excuses. She paused. I know about the custody meeting today because Vanessa put it on her work calendar. I know she's demanding $50,000 or threatening to take Emma, and I know you don't have that money. The folder in Lucas's lap suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I don't need charity. Good. I'm not offering any. Margaret's voice was crisp, businesslike. I'm offering you a choice, Lucas. The same thing Vanessa offered you, actually. But my version comes with different terms. What kind of terms? First, I need you to understand something. Vanessa works for me, but this conversation has nothing to do with company politics or internal dynamics. This is about a father and his daughter. This is about making sure that good people don't get crushed by systems designed to favor those who already have power. Margaret pulled out her phone and tapped the screen a few times. Do you know what the average cost of a custody battle in Illinois is? Lucas shook his head. Between $15,000 and $30,000, assuming it doesn't go to trial. If it goes to trial, you're looking at $50,000 or more. Vanessa has already retained one of the best family law firms in Chicago. They'll drag this out, bury you in paperwork, drain whatever resources you have until you're forced to give up or accept whatever settlement they offer. So I'm supposed to just surrender? Lucas heard the bitterness in his own voice. No, you're supposed to fight, but you can't fight without resources. Margaret set her phone down. I'm prepared to help you, Lucas, but I need you to understand what that means and what it doesn't mean. I don't understand. I can connect you with an attorney, one of the best family law specialists in the state. I can ensure you have the financial resources to see this through. I can provide character witnesses if needed, people who can speak to your reliability, your integrity, your fitness as a parent. Margaret held up a hand before Lucas could interrupt. But I can't fight this battle for you. I can't guarantee you'll win. What I can do is level the playing field so that you have a real chance. Lucas's throat felt tight. Why would you do this? You don't even know me, not really. I know enough, and I'm doing this because I believe in merit, Lucas. I believe people should be judged by their character and their actions, not by their bank balance. Vanessa is a valuable employee, but that doesn't mean she's right about this. Margaret's expression hardened slightly. I'm also doing this because I'm a mother myself. My daughter is grown now, successful in her own right. But I remember what it was like raising her. The sacrifices, the fear that I wasn't doing enough, the constant worry about making the right choices. What happened to your daughter's father? Lucas asked, then immediately regretted the question. I'm sorry, that's not my business. He left when she was 3, Margaret said simply. Decided that fatherhood was too much responsibility, too much work. I raised her alone. I know what it's like to be judged for circumstances beyond your control, to have people assume that because you're struggling financially, you must be failing in other ways too. The limousine pulled up to Morrison Dynamics' main entrance. Through the window, Lucas could see the lobby, all marble and modern art, people in expensive suits moving with purpose and confidence. I need to pick up Emma, Lucas said, glancing at his phone. Mrs. Chen is expecting me. I'll have my driver take you wherever you need to go. But first, I need to know if you're willing to fight, Lucas. Because if you are, if you're ready to stand up for your daughter and refuse to let Vanessa intimidate you into surrender, then we need to move quickly. What do you mean, quickly? Vanessa gave you until Monday to make a decision. That gives us 3 days to build a case. 3 days to gather documentation, prepare testimony, and file a counterpetition if necessary. Margaret pulled out a business card and handed it to Lucas. "This is Jennifer Park. She's the attorney I mentioned. She's expecting your call." Lucas took the card. The paper was heavy, expensive, embossed with gold lettering. "I can't afford—" "You're not paying for this, Lucas. I am. Consider it an investment in justice." Margaret's tone left no room for argument. "Jennifer will explain the legal strategy. She'll need information from you, financial records, documentation of your relationship with Emma, evidence of Vanessa's absence during Emma's life. Can you provide those things?" "I have everything. Photos, school records, medical appointments, everything. I keep it all organized because—" Lucas's voice cracked slightly. "Because I was afraid of this. I was afraid Vanessa would come back someday and try to take her. That fear is about to become your greatest advantage. Fear makes us careful. It makes us document everything, save everything, prepare for worst-case scenarios." Margaret reached across and squeezed Lucas's shoulder briefly, a gesture that was both comforting and somehow commanding. "Call Jennifer tonight. Tell her I referred you. She'll start building your case immediately." "I don't understand why you're doing this," Lucas said again. "There has to be something you want from me." "There is," Margaret said. "I want you to be the father Emma needs. I want you to show her that character matters more than money, that love and commitment and showing up every day count for something in this world." She paused. "And I want Vanessa to understand that she can't use her position and resources to crush people who don't have the same advantages." The driver came around and opened Lucas's door. Cold air rushed in, cutting through his still damp clothes. "One more thing," Margaret said as Lucas started to climb out. "Don't tell Vanessa about this conversation. Not yet. Let her think she has you cornered. Let her think you're going to show up on Monday and sign whatever papers she puts in front of you." "Why?" "Because arrogance makes people careless. Vanessa is brilliant, but she's gotten used to winning through superior resources. She won't expect you to come back with real legal representation. The surprise will work in your favor." Margaret's smile was sharp. "Trust me on this, Lucas. I've been playing this game a lot longer than your ex-wife has." Lucas stepped out of the limousine, his legs unsteady. The business card felt like it was burning a hole in his pocket. Behind him, Margaret's window rolled up, and the limousine pulled away, leaving Lucas standing in front of Morrison Dynamics' gleaming tower. He looked up at the building. 60 stories of glass and steel, each window representing offices where people made decisions that affected thousands of lives. Somewhere up there, Vanessa sat in her expensive office, probably convinced that she'd already won, that Lucas would crumble under the pressure, sign the papers, and fade quietly out of Emma's life. But she was wrong. Lucas pulled out his phone and called Mrs. Chen. The elderly woman answered on the second ring, her voice warm and familiar. "Lucas, I was starting to worry. Emma and I are making cookies." "Well, she's making cookies. I'm mostly making sure she doesn't burn down my kitchen," Mrs. Chen chuckled. "She wants to save you some, but I'm not sure any will survive until you get here. Tell her to eat as many as she wants," Lucas said, and he was surprised to find himself smiling. "Mrs. Chen, can Emma stay with you for maybe another hour? I have something important I need to do." "Of course, dear. Take your time. We're having fun." Lucas hung up and looked down at the business card in his hand. Jennifer Park, attorney at law. The address was only 6 blocks away. He could walk there in 15 minutes. He started walking. The rain had left everything clean and sharp, the air cold enough to burn in his lungs. Lucas walked fast, his mind racing. He thought about everything Margaret had said, about the choices he was being offered. He thought about Vanessa and her confidence, her certainty that money could solve any problem, win any battle. But Margaret had seen something else. She'd seen 2 years of quiet integrity, of showing up and doing the right thing when no one important was watching. And she'd decided that mattered. Lucas found the building, another tower, smaller than Morrison Dynamics, but still impressive, and took the elevator to the 14th floor. The law offices of Park & Associates were exactly what he expected: elegant, professional, quietly expensive. The receptionist looked up as he entered, took in his damp jacket and worn jeans, and her smile became slightly strained. "Can I help you?" I need to see Jennifer Park. Margaret Sloan sent me." The receptionist's expression transformed instantly. "Mr. Reed?" "Yes." "Miss Park is expecting you. Please, right this way." She led him down a hallway lined with diplomas and awards, photographs of Jennifer Park with various important-looking people. Lucas's nervousness increased with every step. What was he doing here? He didn't belong in places like this. But then he thought of Emma, of her face when she'd hugged him this morning, of the way she trusted him completely, believed with absolute certainty that he would always be there for her. He belonged anywhere Emma needed him to be. Jennifer Park's office was corner space with windows overlooking the city. She stood as Lucas entered, a woman in her late 30s with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun and eyes that were already assessing him with professional interest. "Mr. Reed, please sit down." She gestured to a chair across from her desk. "Margaret called me about 20 minutes ago. She gave me the basic outline of your situation." Lucas sat, still clutching his damp folder. "I'm not sure where to start." "Start with this." Jennifer picked up a legal pad and pen. "Tell me about Emma. Not the legal aspects, not the custody dispute. Just tell me about your daughter." It was the last thing Lucas had expected her to ask. He fumbled for words, then found himself talking about Emma's love of space, about her determination to be an astronaut, about the way she organized her stuffed animals by size every night before bed, about burned toast and spelling bees and Dr. Peanuts with his knotted trunk. Jennifer took notes, occasionally asking questions that seemed unrelated to custody law. What did Emma like for breakfast? What were her favorite subjects in school? What made her laugh? "Good," Jennifer said when Lucas finally ran out of words. "That's exactly what we need. Now tell me about Vanessa." Lucas hesitated. "She's not a bad person. She chose her career." "When did she leave?" "When Emma was 18 months old, she got offered a promotion that required extensive travel. We tried to make it work for a while, but she was gone more than she was home. Eventually, she just stopped coming back." "How often has she seen Emma in the past 3 years?" "Maybe a dozen times. She came for Emma's birthday parties, sent presents at Christmas, called every few months." Lucas's jaw tightened. "Emma kept asking why Mommy didn't visit. I ran out of excuses. And now Vanessa wants custody. She wants me to sign away my rights, let her fiancé adopt Emma. She says she can provide things I can't: money, opportunities, stability." "Can you provide love?" Jennifer asked quietly. "Every single day." "Then we have a case." Jennifer pulled out a fresh legal pad. "Here's what's going to happen. We're going to document everything. Every moment you've been there for Emma, every moment Vanessa hasn't. We're going to show the court that stability isn't about money, it's about consistency, presence, being the parent who shows up. Vanessa has lawyers, good ones. So do you," Jennifer said simply. "Margaret Sloan doesn't do things halfway, Mr. Reed. When she decides to back someone, she backs them completely. And based on what she told me about you, I understand why she's doing this." "I don't understand it at all." "Margaret believes in recognizing value where others don't. She built Morrison Dynamics by betting on people everyone else overlooked. Engineers from small schools, researchers whose ideas were considered too radical, managers who prioritized integrity over politics." Jennifer smiled slightly. "You'd be surprised how rare that kind of character is in the corporate world. Margaret notices when she finds it." Lucas thought about the laptop, the security badge, the wallet. Small things. Things anyone should have done. "We need to move fast," Jennifer continued. "Vanessa gave you until Monday. We'll use that time to prepare. I need financial records, proof of your relationship with Emma, documentation of Vanessa's absence. Can you get me those things by tomorrow?" "I keep everything organized. I can bring it all in the morning." "Good. We'll also need character witnesses, people who can speak to your parenting, your reliability. Teachers, neighbors, anyone who's seen you with Emma. Mrs. Patterson, Emma's teacher. Mrs. Chen, my neighbor who helps watch Emma sometimes. There's also Tom Brennan. He works security at the hospital where I work mornings. He's seen me bring Emma to work when school's closed and I can't find childcare." Jennifer wrote everything down. "What about your financial situation? I know that's uncomfortable to discuss, but the court will look at it." Lucas swallowed hard. "I make about $32,000 a year from both jobs. I have $347 in savings. My rent is $900 a month. I have credit card debt from Christmas and from Emma's emergency room visit last month. My car's 12 years old and needs new brakes. I don't have health insurance through my job, so we're on a state program." He waited for Jennifer's expression to change, for the pity or judgment he'd seen so many times before. Instead, she just nodded. "That's more than enough to survive on if you're careful. It shows resourcefulness and financial management. The court won't penalize you for being working class, Mr. Reed. What they will look at is whether Emma's basic needs are being met, and clearly they are. Vanessa will say she can give Emma more. More isn't always better. A child doesn't need a 3-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park. She needs a parent who knows her, who understands her fears and her dreams, who shows up every single day." Jennifer leaned forward. "We're going to tell Emma's story, Mr. Reed. Not Vanessa's version where love equals dollars spent. The real story where love equals time invested, attention paid, promises kept." Lucas felt something in his chest loosen slightly. For the first time since walking into Hale and Associates that afternoon, he felt like maybe he had a chance. "There's something else you should know," Jennifer said. "Margaret mentioned that Vanessa works for her. That could complicate things if Vanessa tries to claim this is workplace retaliation or that Margaret is biasing the case somehow." "Is this workplace retaliation?" "No, this is Margaret recognizing an injustice and choosing to help. But Vanessa's lawyers might try to spin it differently." Jennifer made another note. "We'll need to be very careful about how we present this. Margaret's support should be subtle, character witness material, not obvious financial backing." "I don't want to cause problems for Margaret." "You won't. Margaret Sloan didn't build a billion-dollar company by being easy to intimidate. If anything, Vanessa should be worried about how this could affect her position at Morrison." Jennifer's smile was sharp. "But that's a separate issue from the custody case." They talked for another hour, Jennifer asking detailed questions about Emma's routine, Lucas's work schedule, Vanessa's visitation history. By the time Lucas looked at his watch, he'd been there for 90 minutes and it was getting dark outside. "I need to pick up Emma," he said, standing. "Of course. Bring those documents tomorrow morning if you can. We'll meet again and go over strategy." Jennifer stood as well, extending her hand. "Mr. Reed, I want you to understand something. I don't take cases I don't think I can win. Margaret was right to send you to me, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure Emma stays with her father." Lucas shook her hand, his throat tight. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We have a fight ahead of us, but we're going to win it." Lucas left the office feeling like he'd been running a marathon. His legs were shaky, his mind overwhelmed with everything Jennifer had told him. But underneath the exhaustion, he felt something he hadn't felt in hours. Hope. He took the bus to Mrs. Chen's apartment, watching the city slide past outside the window. Somewhere out there, Vanessa was probably planning her next move, confident in her superior resources and legal team. She had no idea that Lucas had just gained an advantage she couldn't have predicted. Mrs. Chen's apartment was warm and smelled like cookies when Lucas knocked. Emma threw open the door, her face lit up with joy. "Daddy, look! I made dinosaur cookies. Mrs. Chen helped, but I did the mixing and the cutting and everything." Lucas scooped her up in a hug, breathing in the scent of her hair, strawberry shampoo and cookie dough, and home. "They smell amazing, sweetheart. I saved you 3 T-Rexes and a Brontosaurus because those are your favorites." Emma pulled back to look at him seriously. "Are you okay? You look tired." "I'm fine, baby. Just a long day. Mrs." Chen appeared in the doorway, flower on her apron and concern in her eyes. She'd known Lucas long enough to read him well. "Everything all right, dear?" "Yeah," Lucas said, and for the first time that day, he meant it. "Everything's going to be fine." He carried Emma home, listening to her chatter about cookies and math class, and how she and Mrs. Chen had played a game where they named all the planets, including the dwarf ones. Their apartment was the same as always, small, cramped, nothing like Vanessa's place in Lincoln Park. But when Emma ran to her stuffed animals and started telling them about her day, Lucas didn't see what was missing. He saw what was there. Love, consistency, home. That night, after Emma was tucked in with Dr. Peanuts and her 3 required bedtime stories, Lucas sat at their tiny kitchen table and went through his files. Every photo, every school report, every medical record. 3 years of evidence that he'd been there, that he'd shown up, that he'd never once walked away. His phone buzzed, a text from Jennifer Park. Margaret just called. She wanted me to remind you, don't contact Vanessa. Let her think she's won. We'll surprise her in court. Lucas typed back a quick response, then set his phone down and looked around his apartment. At the sofa that converted into Emma's bed, at the curtain that separated the bathroom because they couldn't afford a door, at the tiny kitchen where Emma had burned toast that morning. Vanessa was right about one thing. This wasn't much, but it was enough. It had always been enough. Because love didn't need 3 bedrooms and private bathrooms. It needed presence, attention, someone who knew about knotted elephant trunks and the difference between grape purple and nebula purple. Lucas pulled out the business card Margaret had given him and propped it against the salt shaker on his kitchen table. Tomorrow, he'd bring all his documentation to Jennifer. They'd build a case. They'd fight. And maybe, just maybe, they'd win. The courthouse steps were slick with morning frost when Lucas arrived on Monday, carrying a folder that now contained everything Jennifer Park had requested, and more. He'd spent the entire weekend organizing documents, writing timelines, and preparing himself for what was about to happen. Emma was safe with Mrs. Chen, who'd promised to take her to the aquarium so she wouldn't worry about why Daddy had to go somewhere important on a school day. Jennifer met him in the lobby, dressed in a charcoal suit that radiated quiet authority. Next to her stood a younger woman with a briefcase and an expression of focused intensity. "Lucas, this is Sarah Chen, my associate. She'll be helping with the case." Jennifer's voice was calm, but Lucas could see the alertness in her eyes. "Are you ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Lucas said, though his hands were shaking slightly. "Good. Remember what we discussed. Answer questions directly, don't volunteer extra information, and stay calm no matter what Vanessa's attorneys say. They're going to try to rattle you." They walked through security and down halls that smelled like floor polish and anxiety. Lucas had never been in a courthouse before, and the weight of it pressed down on him, the knowledge that whatever happened in the next few hours could determine the rest of his life with Emma. The courtroom was smaller than Lucas had expected from television, more intimate and somehow more threatening because of it. Vanessa was already there, seated at a table with Richard Pemberton and another attorney Lucas didn't recognize. She looked perfect as always, wearing a navy dress and pearls, her hair styled in soft waves. When she saw Lucas, something flickered across her face, surprise maybe, at seeing him with legal representation. Then her expression smoothed into professional neutrality. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison." The judge was a black woman in her early 60s with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and an expression that suggested she'd heard every possible story and wasn't easily impressed by any of them. She settled into her seat and looked down at the papers before her. "This is a preliminary hearing in the matter of Hale versus Reed, custody petition regarding the minor child Emma Rose Reed, age 7. Counsel for the petitioner?" Richard Pemberton stood. "Richard Pemberton of Pemberton and Associates, Your Honor, representing Vanessa Hale." "Counsel for the respondent?" Jennifer rose smoothly. "Jennifer Park of Park and Associates, representing Lucas Reed, Your Honor." Judge Morrison's eyebrows rose slightly. Lucas wondered if she recognized Jennifer's name, if it meant something that he'd managed to secure representation from someone who clearly operated at a different level than most family court attorneys. "Ms. Park, I wasn't aware your firm took custody cases." "We don't typically, Your Honor, but this case came to my attention through unusual circumstances, and I felt it warranted an exception." "I see. Mr. Pemberton, you filed this petition on Friday. That's quite rushed for a custody matter." "Yes, Your Honor. My client has concerns about the immediate welfare of the child that necessitated expedited action." "Those concerns being?" Richard pulled out his documents, the same ones he'd shown Lucas at their first meeting. "Ms. Hale has documented evidence of inadequate living conditions, financial instability, and insufficient childcare arrangements. The child is living in a studio apartment with no separate bedroom. Her father works 2 jobs and frequently leaves her with an elderly neighbor who lacks proper childcare credentials, and there have been multiple incidents at school suggesting neglect." "Your Honor," Jennifer interrupted smoothly, "the petitioner is making serious allegations without providing context or allowing for rebuttal. May I suggest we proceed with testimony so the court can hear both sides?" Judge Morrison nodded. Agreed. Mr. Pemberton, call your first witness. The petitioner calls Vanessa Hale to the stand. Vanessa walked to the witness box with confident grace, was sworn in, and settled into her seat with perfect posture. Richard approached with a warm smile, as if they were having a casual conversation rather than fighting for custody of a child. Ms. Hale, can you describe your relationship with your daughter Emma? I love Emma very much, Vanessa said, her voice steady and sincere. She's the most important person in my life. When Lucas and I divorced, I thought shared custody would work, but circumstances made that difficult. What circumstances? My career requires significant travel. I'm a senior vice president at Morrison Dynamics, which is a global corporation. I was often overseas or in other states for weeks at a time. It wasn't fair to Emma to have a mother who was constantly leaving. So you made the difficult decision to step back? I did. I thought it was the right thing at the time, giving Emma stability with one parent rather than confusing her with my irregular schedule. Vanessa's voice caught slightly. But I've realized I made a mistake. I've missed so much of her life. I want to make that right. Lucas felt sick. She sounded so reasonable, so genuinely remorseful. He glanced at Jennifer, but her expression remained neutral. Can you describe your current situation? Richard asked. I've restructured my work responsibilities to minimize travel. I'll be based primarily in Chicago for the foreseeable future. I'm engaged to Andrew Whitmore, who's a partner at Clayton and Ross. We're planning to marry in June and have purchased a home together in Lincoln Park, a 4-bedroom house with a yard. We've already prepared a room for Emma with everything she might need. And you're prepared to provide for Emma's needs? Completely. Private school tuition, extracurricular activities, college savings, health insurance, regular dental and medical care. Everything a child needs to thrive. Vanessa paused. I know Lucas loves Emma, but love alone can't provide opportunities. I can give her a better life than he's able to. Richard nodded sympathetically. Can you describe your concerns about Emma's current living situation? I'm worried about her. She lives in a studio apartment in a neighborhood with a high crime rate. Lucas works constantly. He's exhausted all the time. Emma has told me she sometimes has to wake herself up for school because her father is sleeping after working late. She's worn clothes to school that weren't quite clean. She's fallen behind on homework assignments. Your Honor, Jennifer said, standing, I object to this testimony. The witness is making allegations without providing supporting evidence. Sustained. Ms. Hale, please stick to facts you can verify rather than assumptions. Vanessa nodded. I visited Lucas's apartment 2 months ago to drop off Emma's birthday present. It's approximately 800 square feet. Emma doesn't have her own room. She sleeps on a sofa bed in the living area. The bathroom doesn't have a proper door. The building had trash in the hallways and the elevator was broken. When I asked Emma about school, she mentioned falling asleep in class because she'd been up late. Did she say why she'd been up late? She said she couldn't sleep, and her father was working, cleaning offices. Richard let that sink in. Do you believe Emma is being neglected? I believe Lucas is doing his best, Vanessa said carefully. But his best isn't enough. He's a good father who's overwhelmed by circumstances. Emma deserves more than what he can provide. No further questions, Your Honor. Jennifer stood buttoning her jacket as she approached the witness stand. Ms. Hale, you mentioned visiting your daughter 2 months ago for her birthday. When was the last time you saw Emma before that? Vanessa hesitated. It had been a while. My work schedule. How long? Approximately 8 months. 8 months. And before that? I'm not sure exactly. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence a timeline of Ms. Hale's visits with Emma over the past 3 years. Jennifer handed documents to the judge and to Richard. This shows that Ms. Hale has seen her daughter exactly 11 times in 36 months. Sometimes 6 or 7 months passed between visits. Judge Morrison studied the timeline. Ms. Hale, is this accurate? My work responsibilities? Yes or no? Did you see your daughter 11 times in 3 years? Yes, but thank you. Jennifer consulted her notes. You mentioned that Emma told you she sometimes wakes herself up for school. When did she tell you this? At her birthday party. Did you ask her any follow-up questions? Find out if this was a regular occurrence or a one-time event? No, I didn't have time. I had a conference call. You left your daughter's birthday party early to take a work call? Vanessa's jaw tightened. It was an important client. More important than your daughter's 7th birthday. That's not fair. You're twisting. I'm asking questions, Ms. Hale. You testified that Mr. Reed works constantly and is exhausted. Do you know what his work schedule is? He has 2 jobs. He cleans offices at night. Do you know what hours he works? Late hours, clearly, if Emma is being left alone. Emma is never left alone, Jennifer said sharply. But let's establish facts. Do you know what time Mr. Reed's evening shift starts? No. Do you know what time Emma goes to bed? 8 o'clock, probably. 7:30 on school nights. Mr. Reed's evening shift starts at 9 p.m. He puts Emma to bed, reads her 3 stories, which is her required number, not 2, not 4, exactly 3, makes sure she has water, and ensures she's asleep before he leaves. His neighbor, Mrs. Chen, stays in the apartment while he's gone. Did you know any of this? You testified that Emma has worn clothes to school that weren't quite clean. How do you know this? She mentioned it. When? Vanessa shifted slightly. At her birthday party. The party you left early. Did she tell you specifically that her clothes weren't clean, or are you making an assumption? She said her favorite shirt had a stain and she couldn't wear it. A stain on one shirt. Did you ask why? No. Your Honor, I'd like to call Mrs. Chen to testify later, but for now I can tell you what happened. Emma spilled chocolate milk on her favorite shirt the morning before her birthday party. Mr. Reed hand-washed it immediately and hung it to dry, but it wasn't dry by the next morning. Emma was upset because she wanted to wear it to school. Mr. Reed explained she'd have to choose a different shirt, which she did. Jennifer turned back to Vanessa. This is your evidence of neglect. A 7-year-old who couldn't wear her favorite shirt because it was being properly cleaned? It's an example of a parent dealing with normal childhood situations. Let's talk about what you know about Emma, Ms. Hale. What's her favorite subject in school? I'm not sure. Science, maybe? Math. What does she want to be when she grows up? A scientist? An astronaut specifically. She's wanted to be an astronaut since she was 5 years old. What's her stuffed elephant's name? She has a stuffed elephant? Dr. Peanuts. She's had him since she was 2 months old. What does Emma do when she's worried about something but doesn't want to talk about it? Vanessa's face had gone pale. I don't know. She ties Dr. Peanut's trunk in a knot. Mr. Reed knows to look for that signal and to ask gentle questions and wait until she's ready to talk. What's Emma's bedtime routine? I assume she brushes her teeth and goes to bed. 3 bedtime stories, 1 glass of water, not 2 because she'll use that to stall, but 1 that she actually drinks, and her nightlight positioned exactly 12 inches from her bed because closer makes shadows that scare her and further doesn't provide enough light. Mr. Reed knows all of this because he's there every single night. When's the last time you put your daughter to bed, Ms. Hale? When she was a baby, before you left. 3 years ago. You haven't tucked your daughter into bed in 3 years, but you're asking this court to believe you should have custody? I'm trying to make things right, Vanessa said, and there were tears in her eyes now. Real ones, Lucas thought. I know I made mistakes. I'm trying to fix them. By taking Emma away from the only stable parent she's had, by removing her from the home where she feels safe, by separating her from a father who knows her favorite color isn't just purple, but specifically nebula purple. Who knows she doesn't like carrots unless they're roasted? Who knows she needs exactly 3 bedtime stories? Jennifer's voice was hard now. Ms. Hale, you testified that you've restructured your work responsibilities to minimize travel. Have you actually done this, or is this a promise about what you'll do if you get custody? I've started the process. Yes or no? Have you reduced your travel? Not yet, but so this is a promise from someone who promised to be a mother 3 years ago and then disappeared from her daughter's life for months at a time. Jennifer looked at the judge. No further questions, Your Honor. Vanessa stepped down from the witness stand, her composure cracked. Lucas felt a surge of something he couldn't quite name, not satisfaction exactly, but vindication maybe. Jennifer had exposed the truth that Vanessa had tried to hide beneath expensive clothes and rehearsed sincerity. "Mr. Pemberton, do you have additional witnesses?" Judge Morrison asked. "Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to call Dr. Amanda Foster, child psychologist." A woman in her 50s approached the stand, was sworn in, and settled into her seat with professional confidence. Richard approached with a document. "Dr. Foster, you've reviewed the case materials regarding Emma Reed. What are your concerns?" "Financial instability creates significant stress for children. Emma is living in poverty conditions, an apartment below standard size, insufficient personal space, awareness that her father struggles financially. This can impact a child's emotional development and sense of security. And if Emma were to live with Ms. Hale, she would have financial security, her own room, access to resources that could help her thrive academically and socially." Jennifer stood for cross-examination. "Dr. Foster, have you met Emma?" "No, but I've reviewed—" "You've never met her. Have you visited Mr. Reed's apartment?" "No, but the documentation shows—" "You've never seen where Emma lives. Have you interviewed Mr. Reed?" "I've reviewed his financial records. Have you spoken to him?" "No." "So your entire testimony is based on documents provided by Ms. Hale's attorneys?" "Doctor." Foster shifted uncomfortably. "I've reviewed all available materials." "Materials selected by the petitioner. Dr. Foster, in your professional opinion, what's more important for a child's development, financial resources or consistent parental presence?" "Both are important." "If you had to choose one?" "That's not a fair question. Children need both." "But if a child had to have one or the other, money or a parent who shows up every day, which would you recommend?" "A parent who shows up," Dr. Foster admitted, "but ideally—" "Thank you. No further questions." Richard called one more witness, a social worker who'd done a home inspection of Lucas's apartment. She testified about the small space, the lack of a separate bedroom for Emma, the building's condition. But under Jennifer's cross-examination, she also admitted that the apartment was clean, safe, and adequately maintained, that Emma had toys, books, and clean clothes, that there was food in the refrigerator, and the child showed no signs of physical neglect. "Mr. Pemberton, any other witnesses?" "No, Your Honor." "Miss Park?" "Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to call Lucas Reed to the stand." Lucas's legs felt unsteady as he walked to the witness box. He was sworn in, his voice barely above a whisper, and sat down facing the courtroom. Vanessa wouldn't meet his eyes. Jennifer approached with a gentle expression. "Mr. Reed, how long have you been Emma's primary caregiver?" 3 years, since Vanessa left." "Can you describe a typical day with Emma?" Lucas took a breath. "I wake up at 5 a.m. I shower and get dressed quietly so I don't wake Emma. At 6, I wake her up. She's not a morning person, so I usually have to coax her out of bed with promises of pancakes or French toast. We eat breakfast together. She likes to tell me about her dreams. At 7, she gets dressed. She picks out her own clothes now, and sometimes the combinations are interesting, but I let her choose because it makes her feel independent. Go on. We leave at 7:30 to catch the bus. I drop her at school at 8 and then go to my morning job at the hospital cafeteria. I work until 2, then catch 2 buses to pick her up from school at 3:15. We walk home together. She tells me about her day, shows me her homework. Sometimes we stop at the library if she needs books for a project." Lucas's voice steadied as he talked about Emma. This was familiar territory, the rhythm of their life together. "When we get home, she does homework at the kitchen table while I make dinner. She's supposed to focus on homework, but usually she talks to me while I cook, asks questions about math problems, or tells me about something funny that happened at recess. We eat dinner together at 6. After dinner, we clean up together. She washes, I dry. Then we have free time until 7. Sometimes we build Lego sets or watch nature documentaries. She loves anything about space." "What happens at 7? "Bath time. She's getting old enough to want privacy, so I run the bath, make sure the temperature is right, and then I wait outside the bathroom curtain. She talks to me through it, tells me more stories, asks more questions. Emma never stops asking questions." Several people in the courtroom smiled, including Judge Morrison. 7:30, she puts on pajamas and we read 3 stories. She picks them out, usually one about space, one about animals, and one that's funny, then lights out at 8, except for her nightlight. I sit with her for a few minutes, and we talk about the day. She tells me her favorite part and her least favorite part. Then I kiss her forehead, tell her I love her, and she says, "I love you too, Daddy." Lucas's voice cracked on the last words. He cleared his throat. And then, at 9, I leave for my evening shift. Mrs. Chen stays in the apartment. She's usually asleep when I leave, but Mrs. Chen is there in case she wakes up. I clean offices until 3 a.m., come home, sleep for 2 hours, and then the day starts again. That's a grueling schedule. It's necessary. Emma needs food, shelter, clothes. I do what I have to do. Mr. Reed, Ms. Hale testified that Emma sometimes arrives at school in clothes that aren't quite clean. Is that true? Once, she spilled chocolate milk on her favorite shirt and it wasn't dry the next morning. She wore a different shirt, but she was upset about it. I felt terrible, like I'd failed her somehow, but the shirt was being washed properly. It just needed time to dry. Ms. Hale also testified that Emma has fallen behind on homework assignments. There was 1 week last month when Emma was sick with a stomach bug. She missed 3 days of school and got behind on a science project. I helped her catch up over the weekend. We stayed up late Saturday night building a model of the solar system. She was so proud of it. "Do you think you're a good father, Mr. Reed?" Lucas looked at Vanessa for the first time since taking the stand. She was watching him now, her expression unreadable. "I think I'm there," Lucas said quietly. "I show up every single day. I'm not perfect. I can't afford private school or music lessons or a house in Lincoln Park. But I know my daughter. I know when she's happy, when she's sad, when she's scared. I know how to comfort her when she has nightmares. I know what makes her laugh. And I love her more than anything in this world." "Thank you. No further questions." Richard Pemberton approached for cross-examination, his expression sympathetic. "Mr. Reed, you work approximately 80 hours per week between 2 jobs. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And you make approximately $32,000 per year?" "Yes." "You have no health insurance?" "We're on a state program." "You have $347 in savings?" "Yes." "What would happen if you got sick and couldn't work?" Lucas's hands tightened on the armrests. "I'd figure something out. I always do." "But you don't have a plan? No safety net?" "My safety net is working hard and being careful." "What if Emma needed emergency medical care that your insurance didn't cover?" "I'd find a way to pay for it." "How?" "I'd work more hours, take out a loan, whatever it took." "Mr. Reed, don't you think Emma deserves more security than that? More than hoping you can work enough hours or find a loan?" "Emma deserves a father who loves her and is there for her every single day. That's the security that matters." "Does love pay medical bills?" "No, but it shows up at 2 a.m. when she's scared. It remembers she likes Nebula Purple. It knows how to untie Dr. Peanut's trunk when she's worried." Lucas leaned forward. "I know I'm not rich. I know I can't give Emma everything money can buy. But I can give her everything that actually matters." Richard paused, perhaps recognizing that he was losing ground. No further questions. Jennifer called Mrs. Chen next. The elderly woman walked to the stand slowly but with dignity, was sworn in, and smiled at Lucas. "Mrs. Chen, how long have you known Lucas Reed?" 3 years, since he moved into our building with Emma." "Can you describe your relationship with them?" "Lucas is like a son to me. Emma is like a granddaughter. I watch her sometimes when Lucas works, but mostly I'm just their neighbor and friend." "What's Lucas like as a father?" Mrs. Chen's expression softened. "He's wonderful. Tired all the time, but wonderful. I've never seen him lose patience with Emma, not once. Even when he's exhausted and she's being difficult, he's gentle and kind. He reads to her every night. He helps with her homework even when he can barely keep his eyes open. He puts her first, always." "Can you give an example?" "Last winter, Emma wanted a telescope for Christmas. Lucas worked extra shifts for 2 months to save up for it. He was working himself to exhaustion, but he wanted to make sure she got what she'd asked for. On Christmas morning, when she opened it, his face, Mrs. Chen's voice trembled. He was so happy just watching her be happy. That's who Lucas is." "Thank you, Mrs. Chen." Richard Pemberton stood. "Mrs. Chen, you're 82 years old, is that correct?" "Yes." "Do you have any formal training in child care?" I was a teacher for 40 years. But no childcare certification for in-home care? I don't need certification to love a child and keep her safe. What if there was an emergency while Mr. Reed was at work? Are you physically capable of responding? I may be old, but I'm not incapable. I know how to dial 911. I know Emma's medical history, her allergies, her doctor's name. I know exactly what to do if something goes wrong. Have you ever fallen asleep while watching Emma? Mrs. Chen hesitated. Once. I was reading to her and dozed off, but Emma woke me up and we laughed about it. She wasn't in any danger. But you could have been needed and you were asleep. I could say the same thing about any parent who's ever been tired. The difference is I would never leave Emma truly alone. I'm always there, always watching. Jennifer called Emma's teacher next, Mrs. Patterson, a kind-faced woman in her 40s who taught second grade. She testified about Emma's academic performance, her social development, her obvious bond with her father. Emma talks about her dad constantly, Mrs. Patterson said. She's very proud of him. She knows he works hard to take care of her. At parent-teacher conferences, Mr. Reed always comes prepared with questions. He wants to know how Emma is doing, what she's struggling with, how we can help at home. I've had parents with far more resources who show far less interest in their children's education. Has Emma ever shown signs of neglect or abuse? Never. She's well-fed, clean, appropriately dressed. She's happy and well-adjusted. If anything, she's more emotionally secure than many children I've taught. The testimony continued through the afternoon. Character witnesses who spoke about Lucas's integrity, his work ethic, his devotion to Emma. Financial experts who explained that while Lucas lived modestly, he managed his money responsibly and met Emma's needs. Even Tom Brennan, the security guard from the hospital, testified about seeing Lucas bring Emma to work on snow days when school was closed, how he'd set her up in the break room with books and homework while he worked. That little girl adores her father, Tom said, and he adores her right back. That's worth more than all the money in the world. Finally, as afternoon light faded outside the courtroom windows, Judge Morrison called for closing arguments. Richard Pemberton stood first. Your Honor, this case is about providing the best possible life for Emma Reed. Ms. Hale has made mistakes. She acknowledges that. But she's prepared to make amends and offer Emma opportunities that Mr. Reed simply cannot match. Financial security, educational resources, a stable home environment. Mr. Reed loves his daughter, but love alone doesn't ensure a child's well-being. We ask the court to grant Ms. Hale primary custody so that Emma can have the life she deserves. Jennifer stood, her voice clear and strong. Your Honor, this case is about recognizing what truly matters in a child's life. It's not about the size of an apartment or the amount of money in a bank account. It's about consistency, presence, being the parent who shows up every single day, who knows their child's fears and dreams and favorite colors. Mr. Reed has been that parent for 3 years while Ms. Hale built her career. Now she wants to take Emma away from the only stable home she's known, and she's using her financial advantages to make it seem reasonable. But children aren't possessions to be claimed when convenient. Emma has a father who loves her, knows her, and puts her first every single day. That's what she deserves. That's what the court should protect. Judge Morrison was quiet for a long moment, reviewing her notes. Then she looked up at both attorneys, at Vanessa and Lucas. I'll take this under advisement and issue a ruling within 48 hours. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell, and Lucas felt his legs go weak. It was over, at least this part of it. Now there was nothing to do but wait. Outside the courthouse, Lucas stood on the steps and let the cold air fill his lungs. His hands were still trembling from the adrenaline that had carried him through hours of testimony, and now that it was over, exhaustion hit him like a physical weight. Jennifer stood beside him, briefcase in hand, her expression unreadable. How do you think it went? Lucas asked, hating how his voice shook. Better than I expected. Judge Morrison is fair. She looks at the whole picture, not just the financial aspects. But Lucas, you need to understand that we're not guaranteed to win. Vanessa has resources, and the system does tend to favor parents who can provide material advantages. So I might lose Emma. You might, but if you do, it won't be because you didn't fight hard enough or because you're not a good father. It'll be because the system is imperfect. Jennifer squeezed his shoulder briefly. Go home. Be with your daughter. Try not to think about this for the next 48 hours. I know that's impossible, but try. Lucas nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in his throat. He watched Jennifer walk away, her heels clicking on the courthouse steps, and then he turned to find Margaret Sloan standing near the street, her black limousine idling at the curb. You didn't have to come, Lucas said as he approached her. I wanted to see how it went. Jennifer called me during the lunch recess. Margaret studied his face. You did well in there. You were honest, authentic. Those things matter. Do they matter enough? We'll find out. Margaret gestured to the limousine. Let me give you a ride home. You shouldn't be alone on the bus right now. Lucas wanted to refuse. He'd already accepted so much help from this woman, but the thought of sitting on a crowded bus, trying to process everything that had happened while strangers pressed against him, was unbearable. He got into the car. They rode in silence for several minutes, the city sliding past outside the tinted windows. Lucas watched people on the sidewalks going about their ordinary days, and he envied them their ordinary problems. Finally, Margaret spoke. I sat in the back of the courtroom, she said. I hope that wasn't inappropriate, but I wanted to hear the testimony myself. You heard everything? Everything, including Vanessa's testimony. Margaret's voice was carefully neutral. I've worked with Vanessa for 5 years. She's brilliant at her job, strategic, focused, capable of making difficult decisions without hesitation. But watching her today, listening to her try to explain why she deserves custody of a daughter she barely knows, I saw something I hadn't seen before. What's that? Desperation. Vanessa isn't fighting for Emma because she truly believes she can provide a better life. She's fighting because she realizes she made a terrible mistake 3 years ago, and she's trying to fix it by applying the same ruthless efficiency she uses in business. But children aren't corporate acquisitions. You can't just decide you want one and deploy resources until you get it. Lucas looked down at his hands, still clutching the folder of documents he'd brought to court. Do you think she actually wants Emma, or does she just want to win? I think she wants to believe she's a good mother, and the easiest way to do that is to have custody of her child, regardless of whether that's what's actually best for Emma. Margaret paused. I also think Andrew Whitmore has something to do with this. He's very image conscious. Having a ready-made family makes him look like a devoted family man. It's good for his political ambitions. Political ambitions? Andrew's planning to run for state senate in 2 years. A photogenic family plays well with voters. Margaret's expression hardened. I'm not saying Vanessa's motives are entirely cynical. I think she does love Emma, in her own way. But love that only shows up when it's convenient isn't the kind of love a child needs. The limousine pulled up in front of Lucas's building. Through the window, Lucas could see Mrs. Chen's apartment on the 2nd floor, lights glowing warm against the gray afternoon. Emma was up there, probably doing homework or playing with her stuffed animals, completely unaware that her entire future hung in the balance of a judge's decision. Lucas, Margaret said as he reached for the door handle, regardless of what happens with the custody case, I want to talk to you about something else. Your future with Morrison Dynamics. Lucas turned back, confused. My future? I'm a janitor. You're a person who notices things, solves problems, and cares about doing things right. Those qualities are valuable in any position. Margaret pulled out a business card. Her own this time, not Jennifer's. When this is over, call me. I have a proposition for you. Not charity, she added quickly, seeing Lucas's expression. A job offer. A real one based on merit. What kind of job? We can discuss details later. For now, just know that I've been watching you for 2 years and I see potential that's being wasted on night shifts and cleaning supplies. You're better than that, Lucas. You deserve better. I need to pick up Emma, Lucas said, overwhelmed by everything. The hearing, Margaret's kindness, the uncertainty of the next 48 hours. Of course, go be with your daughter. And Lucas? Try to have faith. You've done everything right. Sometimes that has to be enough. Lucas climbed out of the limousine and watched it pull away, then trudged up the stairs to Mrs. Chen's apartment. He could hear Emma's laughter before he even knocked, and the sound of it made his chest tight. He'd testified in court for hours about how much he loved his daughter, but nothing he'd said captured the actual feeling of it, the way her laughter could make everything else disappear, the way her happiness mattered more than his own breathing. Mrs. Chen opened the door, Emma visible behind her with paint on her hands and joy on her face. "Daddy, look, we're making watercolor paintings. I painted the Andromeda Galaxy, see? Mrs. Chen helped me mix the colors to get the right kind of purple." Lucas knelt down and pulled Emma into a hug, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and watercolor paint. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Absolutely beautiful." "How was your important meeting?" Emma asked, pulling back to look at him with those wide, trusting eyes. "It was fine, just some grown-up stuff." "Was it about work?" "Something like that." Lucas managed a smile. "Did you have fun at the aquarium?" "Oh my gosh, Daddy, they had jellyfish, real ones. And they glow in the dark, kind of, and Mrs. Chen said they're older than dinosaurs, which is so cool because that means they've been around for like a gazillion years. And Emma talked the whole way home, her words tumbling over each other in excitement. Lucas let her voice wash over him, focusing on this moment instead of the hearing, the waiting, the fear. This was real. This mattered. Whatever happened in the next 2 days, he had right now. That evening followed their usual routine. Dinner at 6, macaroni and cheese with dinosaur-shaped noodles because Emma had declared it was a celebration dinner for seeing real jellyfish. Clean up together, Emma chattering about bioluminescence while Lucas dried dishes. Bath time at 7, Emma singing songs she'd learned at school through the bathroom curtain. 3 bedtime stories at 7:30, one about space, one about sea creatures, and one funny one about a dragon who was afraid of his own fire. "Daddy?" Emma said as Lucas was tucking her in, Dr. Peanuts already positioned in her arms. "Yeah, sweetheart? Are you sad about something?" Lucas's hand stilled on the blanket. "What makes you think that?" "You have your sad face, the one where you smile but your eyes don't smile." 7 years old, and she could read him like he was written in large print. Lucas sat down on the edge of the sofa bed, choosing his words carefully. "I'm a little worried about some grown-up things, but you don't need to worry about them, okay? I've got everything handled." "Is it about money?" "I heard you tell Mrs. Chen that we have to be careful with money." "Emma, look at me." Lucas waited until she met his eyes. "We're okay. We have everything we need. You don't have to worry about money or anything else. That's my job, and I'm good at it." "I know you are. You're good at everything." Emma hugged Dr. Peanuts tighter. "But Daddy, if we need more money, I could help. I could get a job." "A job? You're 7. I could walk dogs or sell lemonade or maybe be an astronaut early. Do they pay astronauts a lot?" Lucas felt tears prick his eyes. Here was his daughter, worried about helping him pay bills, offering to become an astronaut early so he wouldn't have to work so hard. This was what Vanessa didn't understand. This connection, this love that made a child want to walk dogs to help her father. "You know what would help me the most?" Lucas said softly. "What?" "If you just keep being exactly who you are. Keep being smart and funny and kind. Keep loving space and jellyfish and nebula purple. Keep doing your homework and making me burn toast for breakfast. That's the job I need you to do." Emma considered this seriously. "Okay, I can do that, but if you change your mind about the dog walking thing, let me know." "I will. I promise." Lucas kissed her forehead. "I love you, Emma Rose." "I love you too, Daddy." She paused. "Even if we didn't have any money at all, I'd still love you the most." Lucas had to leave the room before she saw him cry. He stood in the tiny kitchen, pressing his palms against his eyes, trying to breathe through the emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. This was what he was fighting for, this love that didn't depend on money or big houses or private schools. This pure, uncomplicated love that made his daughter offer to walk dogs at 7 years old because she wanted to help him. His phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Remember, don't contact Vanessa. Don't discuss the case with anyone who might talk to her attorneys. Just live your normal life and wait." Lucas texted back a quick acknowledgement, then forced himself to get ready for his evening shift. Mrs. Chen arrived at 8:30, letting herself in with the spare key Lucas had given her years ago. She found him in the kitchen, staring at nothing. "She's asleep," Mrs. Chen said softly. "And you look terrible. I feel terrible. The hearing didn't go well? I don't know, maybe. Jennifer said we did well, but that doesn't mean we'll win. Lucas rubbed his face. What if I lose her, Mrs. Chen? What if the judge decides Vanessa's money matters more than everything else? Then you appeal. You fight. You don't give up. Mrs. Chen took his hands in her weathered ones. Lucas, I've known you for 3 years. I've watched you raise that little girl with more love and dedication than I've seen from parents who have every advantage. You're a wonderful father. Any judge with sense will see that. But what if she doesn't? What if you go to work and do your job and come home to your daughter tomorrow like always? Mrs. Chen interrupted firmly. What if you have faith that truth matters and that judges can see through expensive suits and rehearse testimony? What if you trust that doing the right thing for 3 years counts for something? Lucas wanted to believe her. He wanted to have that kind of faith. But the system had never worked in favor of people like him, and he'd learned young not to expect miracles. He went to work, caught the bus to downtown, and cleaned offices with mechanical precision. Usually this work soothed him. The repetitive motions, the visible results, the quiet satisfaction of making spaces clean and orderly. Tonight, it just gave him too much time to think. He was emptying trash on the 42nd floor of Morrison Dynamics when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to find Vanessa standing in the hallway, still dressed in the navy outfit she'd worn to court, her expression uncertain. I saw your name on the cleaning schedule, she said. I waited. You shouldn't be here. Jennifer said we shouldn't talk. I know, but Vanessa's professional composure cracked slightly. Lucas, I need to say something. There's nothing to say. We made our arguments in court. Now we wait. I saw your face today. When you talked about Emma. When you described your mornings together, your routines. Vanessa's voice was quiet. I didn't know about Dr. Peanuts. I didn't know about the 3 stories or the Nebula Purple. I didn't know any of it. That's the point, Vanessa. You don't know her. I want to. I want the chance to know her the way you do. Then you should have stayed 3 years ago. You should have put her first instead of your career. Lucas turned back to the trash can, unable to look at her. You can't just decide you want to be a mother when it's convenient. That's not how it works. I know I failed her, failed both of you. Vanessa moved closer. But Lucas, I'm not the villain you're making me out to be. I was overwhelmed. I was drowning in work and motherhood and a marriage that was falling apart. I made a choice, the wrong choice, because I couldn't handle all of it. So you chose work and left me with everything else. Yes, and I've regretted it every day since. Do you know what it's like to see photos of Emma growing up and realize I've missed everything? That I'm a stranger to my own daughter? Do you know what it's like to raise a child alone? To work 2 jobs and still barely make rent? To have your daughter ask why mommy doesn't visit and not know how to answer because the truth will break her heart? They stood in silence, 3 years of hurt and anger and regret filling the space between them. Finally, Vanessa spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. What do you want, Lucas? What would make this right? I want you to drop the custody petition. I want you to leave us alone. I can't do that. I won't. Then there's nothing more to say. Lucas picked up his trash bag. You should go. Your lawyers were right. We shouldn't be talking. Lucas, go, Vanessa, please. She left, her heels clicking down the empty hallway, and Lucas stood alone in the fluorescent silence of the office building. His hands were shaking again. He couldn't keep doing this, couldn't keep functioning normally while his entire world hung in the balance. He finished his shift at 3 a.m. and caught the bus home, the city dark and quiet around him. In his apartment, Mrs. Chen had fallen asleep in the armchair, a book open in her lap. Emma was sprawled across the sofa bed, Dr. Peanuts clutched in one hand, her other arm flung out like she was reaching for something in her dreams. Lucas covered Mrs. Chen with a blanket and stood watching Emma sleep, memorizing every detail of her face. What if this was all temporary? What if in 2 days, a judge decided that money mattered more than love, and Emma was taken away to live with Vanessa and Andrew in their big house in Lincoln Park? He couldn't think like that. Mrs. Chen was right. He had to have faith. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Lucas went through his morning routine mechanically. Wake up, shower, Wake Emma, breakfast, bus to school, work at the hospital. But everything felt muted, like he was moving through water. His coworkers noticed. "You okay, Lucas?" Tom Brennan asked during Lucas's lunch break. "You've been staring at that sandwich for 10 minutes without taking a bite. Just tired. This about that custody thing? The court case?" Lucas looked up sharply. "How did you know about that?" "I testified, remember? That lawyer called me, Jennifer Park. She said you needed character witnesses." Tom sat down across from Lucas. "Look, I don't know much about legal stuff, but I know you're a good father. Anyone with eyes can see that. The judge will see it too." "I hope you're right." "I am right. Have some faith, man. You've earned it." But faith felt impossible when so much was at stake. Lucas picked up Emma from school and took her to the library like she'd requested. She needed books about ocean life for a school project. He watched her browse the shelves with intense concentration, occasionally pulling out books and reading the back covers before making her selections. "This one," Emma announced, holding up a book about deep-sea creatures. "And this one about coral reefs, and maybe this one about sharks? Do you think Mrs. Patterson will like sharks?" "I think Mrs. Patterson will like whatever you choose," Lucas said. They checked out the books and walked home through streets that were starting to fill with evening commuters. Emma skipped ahead, then back, then ahead again, her library books clutched to her chest like treasures. "Daddy, did you know that the ocean is deeper than Mount Everest is tall? That's what this book says. The deepest part of the ocean is so deep that if you put Mount Everest in it, the mountain would be completely covered with water on top. Isn't that amazing?" "That's amazing, sweetheart." "And there are fish down there that make their own light because it's so dark, like living flashlights. Can you imagine being a fish that's also a flashlight?" Lucas smiled despite his anxiety. "I cannot imagine that. I want to see the deep ocean someday, maybe before I go to space, or maybe after. Do astronauts ever study the ocean? They should, because both places are really hard to get to and really mysterious." They made it home, and Emma immediately spread her library books across the kitchen table and started taking notes for her project. Lucas made dinner, chicken and rice tonight, simple and cheap, and tried to focus on the normalcy of it. This was his life. This mattered. Not courtrooms or judges or legal arguments, but this. Emma at the kitchen table, reading about bioluminescent fish, asking questions faster than he could answer them. His phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Still no word from the court. Probably tomorrow morning. Try to get some sleep tonight." Sleep. Right, as if that was possible. That night, after Emma was asleep and Mrs. Chen had gone home, Lucas sat in the dark kitchen and let himself imagine the worst-case scenario. Losing Emma. Reduced to supervised visits every other weekend. Watching his daughter grow up from a distance while Andrew Whitmore became Dad, and Lucas became just a name she used to know. The fear was paralyzing. He'd been running on adrenaline and determination since Friday, but now, alone in the dark with nothing to do but wait, the reality of what he might lose crashed over him. Emma was everything. She was his reason for waking up at 5 a.m. and working 80-hour weeks. She was his future, his hope, his heart walking around outside his body. Without her, he was nothing. His phone rang at 11 p.m., jerking him out of dark thoughts. Jennifer's name appeared on the screen. "Lucas, I just got an email from the court. Judge Morrison is issuing her ruling tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. We need to be there." "Tomorrow." "Okay, I can do that." "Lucas, listen to me. Whatever happens, you fought. You stood up for your daughter and you didn't back down. That matters, regardless of the outcome." "Will we win?" "I don't know, but I do know that you gave it everything you had. Now get some rest. I'll meet you at the courthouse at 8:30. Lucas hung up and sat in the dark kitchen, his heart pounding. Tomorrow. In less than 12 hours, he'd know whether he got to keep being Emma's father, or whether that privilege was being given to someone who'd chosen work over family 3 years ago. He didn't sleep that night. He lay on his bed, really just a mattress on the floor in the corner of their studio apartment, and listened to Emma breathe, watched the rise and fall of her shoulders in the dim light from her nightlight. He memorized the sound of her sleep breathing, the way she occasionally muttered something incomprehensible, the way Dr. Peanuts' trunk had come unknotted during the night because she felt safe. At 5 a.m., Lucas gave up on sleep and took a shower. At 6, he woke Emma gently. "It's Tuesday," she said sleepily. "We have library today. Can I bring my ocean books to show Mrs. Patterson?" "Of course, sweetheart." They went through their morning routine, but Lucas felt like he was watching from outside his body. Emma chattered about her ocean project, about how she was going to make a poster with different ocean zones showing which creatures lived at which depths. Lucas nodded and responded, but his mind was already at the courthouse, already waiting for Judge Morrison's decision. "Daddy, you're not eating your breakfast," Emma observed. "I'm not very hungry this morning." "Are you sick?" "No, baby, just have some things on my mind." "Grown-up things?" "Yeah, grown-up things." Emma studied him seriously, then reached across the table and patted his hand. "It's going to be okay, Daddy. Whenever I'm worried about things, I remember that you always make everything okay. So if you're worried, just remember that you always make everything okay for me, so probably it will be okay for you too." Lucas had to look away before she saw the tears in his eyes. He walked her to school, hugged her tight before she ran inside, and then caught the bus downtown to the courthouse. Jennifer was waiting on the steps, looking professional and confident in a gray suit. "Ready?" she asked. "No, but let's do this anyway." They walked into the courthouse together, through security, down those familiar hallways to the same courtroom where they'd spent all day Monday. Vanessa was already there with Richard Pemberton, looking pale and nervous. When she saw Lucas, something flashed across her face. Guilt, maybe, or fear that mirrored his own. Judge Morrison entered at exactly 9 a.m., carrying a folder that contained Lucas's entire future. She settled into her seat and looked out at the courtroom with those sharp, assessing eyes. "This is a difficult case," she began, her voice clear and firm. "Both parties clearly care about the child in question. Both have presented compelling arguments for why they should have custody. But custody decisions cannot be based solely on financial resources or good intentions. They must be based on what serves the best interests of the child." Lucas couldn't breathe. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair so hard his knuckles went white. "I've reviewed all the testimony and evidence presented," Judge Morrison continued. "I've considered the living arrangements, the financial situations, the character witnesses, and most importantly, the history of parental involvement. Ms. Hale has made it clear that she regrets her absence from her daughter's life and wishes to make amends. That desire is commendable. However, regret does not erase 3 years of absence, nor does it automatically qualify someone for custody." Vanessa's face had gone completely white. Mr. Reed, on the other hand, has demonstrated consistent, devoted parenting for the entirety of his daughter's conscious memory. He has made significant personal sacrifices to ensure his daughter's well-being. He knows her intimately, her fears, her dreams, her routines. Most importantly, he has been present. Day after day, year after year, he has shown up for his daughter. Judge Morrison looked directly at Lucas. "The law recognizes that children need stability and consistency. They need parents who understand them, who can provide not just material comfort, but emotional security. Money cannot replace presence. A larger apartment cannot replace knowing that your parent will be there when you wake up frightened in the night. Private school tuition cannot replace a father who helps with homework, even when he's exhausted from working 2 jobs." Lucas felt Jennifer squeeze his hand under the table. "Therefore, it is the ruling of this court that the petition for custody transfer is denied. Lucas Reed will retain full legal and physical custody of Emma Rose Reed. Ms. Hale will be granted standard visitation rights every other weekend and alternating holidays, pending successful completion of a reunification program designed to rebuild the parent-child relationship in a healthy, supervised manner." The words took a moment to penetrate. Denied. Lucas would retain custody. Emma was staying with him. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, her voice taking on a harder edge, "I want to address the manner in which this petition was filed. Ms. Hale, your attorneys attempted to intimidate Mr. Reed into signing away his parental rights by threatening an expensive custody battle he couldn't afford. That kind of legal bullying is unacceptable in my courtroom. Had Mr. Reed not found adequate legal representation, this case might have had a very different outcome, not because the law favored you, but because you had the resources to overwhelm him. That is not justice. Vanessa was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. I'm also troubled by your testimony regarding your restructured work schedule. When pressed, you admitted you haven't actually reduced your travel obligations. You've merely promised to do so if you gain custody. That suggests this petition was more about winning than about genuine readiness to be a full-time parent. Judge Morrison closed her folder. Mr. Reed, you've done an exceptional job raising your daughter under difficult circumstances. This court commends your dedication and sacrifice. Ms. Hale, you have the opportunity to build a relationship with your daughter, but it will be on terms that prioritize Emma's well-being and stability, not your convenience. I strongly recommend you take advantage of the reunification program and learn what it truly means to put your child first. The gavel fell, and Lucas felt his entire body go weak with relief. He'd won. Emma was staying with him. 3 years of fear, of waiting for this moment, and he'd won. Jennifer was talking to him, saying something about next steps and visitation schedules, but Lucas couldn't hear her over the roaring in his ears. Across the courtroom, Vanessa stood abruptly and left without looking at him, Richard Pemberton hurrying after her. But Lucas didn't care. He didn't care about Vanessa's disappointment or her tears or anything except the fact that he got to keep being Emma's father. Lucas. Jennifer's voice finally penetrated. Did you hear me? I won. We won. You won. You get to go home to your daughter and tell her everything's okay. Jennifer smiled. You deserve this, Lucas. You earned it. Outside the courthouse, Margaret Sloan was waiting by her limousine. She smiled when she saw Lucas's face. Judge Morrison made the right decision, she said simply. Thank you, Lucas managed, for everything. For the attorney, for believing in me, for... You don't need to thank me. You did the hard part. You showed up for your daughter every day for 3 years. I just made sure you had a fair chance to prove it in court. Margaret pulled out her business card again. Now, about that job offer, are you ready to hear it? Yes. Yes, I think I am. Good. Come see me next Monday. We'll discuss the details then. Margaret's expression softened. Go pick up your daughter from school, Lucas. Tell her she gets to keep sleeping in her own bed, in her own home, with her father who loves her. That's what matters today. Lucas nodded, unable to speak past the emotion clogging his throat. He watched Margaret's limousine pull away, then started walking toward the bus stop. He had 3 hours until school let out, 3 hours to process everything that had happened, 3 hours to let himself feel the full weight of relief and joy and gratitude. He was going to keep being Emma's father. That was all that mattered. Everything else, the job offer from Margaret, the supervised visitation with Vanessa, the future that stretched out ahead of them, all of that could wait. For now, Lucas Reed was going to pick up his daughter from school and tell her that everything was going to be okay. Because for the first time in 3 years, it actually was. Lucas stood outside Sandburg Elementary at exactly 3:15, earlier than he'd ever arrived before. Other parents were clustered in small groups, chatting about carpools and piano lessons and things that belonged to a world Lucas had never quite been part of. He stood apart from them, hands shoved in his jacket pockets, watching the doors and waiting for Emma to appear. When the bell rang and children began streaming out, Lucas's heart started racing. He spotted Emma near the middle of the crowd, her purple backpack bouncing as she walked with another girl, both of them giggling about something. She hadn't seen him yet. For just a moment, Lucas let himself watch her, this beautiful, brilliant little person who wanted to be an astronaut and knew the names of all the dwarf planets and tied Dr. Peanuts' trunk in a knot when she was worried. She was his. Legally, officially, permanently his. Judge Morrison had said so. Daddy! Emma spotted him and broke into a run, her backpack flying behind her. You're here early! Did you get off work? Lucas caught her in a hug and lifted her off the ground, spinning her once before setting her down. I had some important business this morning. How was school? Good. We started our ocean projects, and Mrs. Patterson loved my books, and I got to show everyone the picture of the anglerfish with the light. And Tommy Chen said it looks scary, but I said it's only scary if you're a small fish, and we're not small fish, we're humans. So it's actually just cool. Emma paused for breath. Why are you smiling like that? Like what? Like you won something. You have your winning face. Lucas knelt down so he was eye level with her. That's because I did win something. Something really important. What did you win? I won the right to keep being your dad forever. No matter what. Emma's forehead wrinkled in confusion. You're already my dad. You can't win something you already have. You're absolutely right. I was already your dad. But now it's official in a way that means nobody can ever change it. Lucas took her hands in his. Remember how I had those important grown-up meetings? Well, they were all about making sure you and I get to stay together. And today, a very smart judge decided that we belong together. That our little apartment and our routines and our life together is exactly right. Were you worried we wouldn't stay together? Lucas hesitated. He'd tried so hard to keep his fear from touching Emma, to protect her from the weight of what had been at stake, but she deserved honesty. Yes, he said quietly. I was very worried. But I don't have to worry anymore. Emma threw her arms around his neck and hugged him tight. I wasn't worried. I knew we'd stay together. You always make everything okay. They walked home together, Emma chattering about her ocean project and a game she'd played at recess. Lucas listened to every word, memorizing the sound of her voice, the way she skipped every few steps, the way she pointed out interesting things. A dog wearing a sweater, a bird sitting on a traffic light, clouds that looked like they might bring snow. This was his life. This simple, beautiful, ordinary life that had almost been taken away. Mrs. Chen was waiting in the hallway when they arrived home, her expression anxious. Well? We won, Lucas said, and his voice broke on the words. She's mine. Officially, legally mine. Mrs. Chen's eyes filled with tears. Of course you won. Any judge with sense could see where that child belongs. She pulled Lucas into a hug, then Emma. This calls for a celebration. I'm making my special dumplings for dinner. Lucas, you go rest. You look exhausted. I am exhausted. Lucas realized it was true. The adrenaline that had been carrying him for days was finally fading, leaving behind bone-deep weariness. But I have to work tonight. No, you don't. You call in sick, you stay home with your daughter, and you celebrate. Mrs. Chen's tone left no room for argument. One night off won't ruin you, and that child needs her father tonight. Lucas wanted to argue. He couldn't afford to miss a shift, couldn't afford to lose the money, but Emma was looking at him with such hope that he found himself nodding. Okay, one night off. He called his supervisor at the cleaning company, explained he had a family emergency, and accepted the disapproving silence on the other end of the line. It didn't matter. Tonight, he was going to be present for his daughter in a way he rarely got to be on weeknights. No rushing off to a second shift. No exhaustion pulling at the edges of everything. Just time together. Emma wanted to work on her ocean project, so Lucas spread newspapers across their small kitchen table and helped her create a poster showing the different ocean zones. She drew fish and whales and submarines with careful concentration while Lucas cut out labels from construction paper. Mrs. Chen brought over dumplings at 6, and they ate together, the three of them crowded around the table, Emma explaining her poster in detail while Mrs. Chen asked questions that made Emma think deeper about what she'd learned. The midnight zone is so deep that no light reaches it at all, Emma said, pointing to the darkest section of her poster. But fish still live there. They adapt. That's what Mrs. Patterson says. Living things are really good at adapting to hard situations. Lucas met Mrs. Chen's eyes across the table and saw his own emotion reflected there. Living things are really good at adapting to hard situations. That had been their life for 3 years. Adapting, surviving, making do with less than enough and somehow turning it into more than enough because of the love that filled the spaces where money couldn't reach. After dinner, they played a board game Emma had gotten for her birthday. Something about building space stations that Lucas didn't entirely understand, but Emma explained with patient detail. At 7:30, bath time came and went with the usual routine. 3 stories at 8, Emma chose all space books tonight, including one about Mae Jemison that they'd read a dozen times before. Daddy, Emma said as Lucas was tucking her in, are you happy? So happy, sweetheart. The happiest I've been in a long time. Good, because you deserve to be happy. You work really hard and you're really nice and you make the best dinosaur macaroni. Emma paused, considering. Well, maybe not the best. Mrs. Chen's is pretty good too, but yours is the best that a dad makes." Lucas laughed, the sound surprising him. When was the last time he'd laughed like that, freely and without the weight of worry pressing down? "I'll take it. Best dad-made dinosaur macaroni." "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, Emma Rose. More than all the stars in the sky." "That's a lot of stars. There are like billions and billions." "Exactly. That's how much I love you." Emma fell asleep within minutes, her day of school and excitement catching up with her. Lucas sat on the edge of the sofa bed for a long time, just watching her sleep, letting himself feel the full weight of relief. She was his. She was staying. Tomorrow would come with all its usual challenges, bills to pay, jobs to work, a life that was still financially precarious, but Emma would be there through all of it. His phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Congratulations again. The formal custody order will be filed within a week. Vanessa's visitation schedule starts in 2 weeks after she completes the first session of the reunification program. If you have any questions, call me." Lucas typed back a thank you, then set his phone aside. He thought about Vanessa, about the look on her face when Judge Morrison had delivered her ruling. There had been genuine pain there, genuine regret. Lucas didn't hate her. He'd stopped hating her a long time ago, when he'd realized that anger took energy he needed for Emma. But he didn't forgive her either, not yet. Maybe someday when Emma was old enough to understand what had happened and could make her own choices about her relationship with her mother. For now, supervised visitation was exactly right. The weekend passed in a blur of normalcy that felt miraculous precisely because it was so ordinary. Saturday morning pancakes that Emma helped make, resulting in batter on the ceiling and laughter that made the mess worthwhile. An afternoon at the public library, Emma checking out more books about ocean life and one about female astronauts. Sunday was laundry and grocery shopping and meal prep for the week ahead. Tasks that had always felt like burdens but now felt like privileges because they were tasks he got to do with Emma by his side. Monday morning came too quickly. Lucas woke at 5 a.m. as always, showered, woke Emma at 6. She was grumpy this morning, not wanting to get up, and Lucas had to coax her with promises of French toast. They went through their morning routine, caught the bus to school, and Lucas felt the familiar rhythm of his life settling back into place. Except today was different, because at 10 a.m., he had an appointment at Morrison Dynamics with Margaret Sloan herself. Lucas had debated what to wear. He didn't own a suit, hadn't needed one since his wedding 7 years ago, and that suit had long since been donated to Goodwill when money got tight. He settled on his best jeans and a button-down shirt Mrs. Chen had ironed for him, hoping he looked at least somewhat presentable. The receptionist at Morrison Dynamics recognized him this time. "Mr. Reed, Miss Sloan is expecting you. I'll take you up." The elevator ride to the 60th floor felt longer than it had last time he'd been here. Lucas watched the numbers climb, his stomach twisting with nerves. This was where Vanessa worked, where she'd built her successful career while he'd been home raising Emma. This was the world of people who belonged in corner offices and made $400,000 a year. He didn't belong here. But Margaret had asked him to come, and after everything she'd done for him, he owed her the courtesy of hearing her out. Margaret's office took up the entire corner of the 60th floor, windows on 2 sides offering panoramic views of Chicago. The furniture was modern and expensive. The art on the walls probably worth more than Lucas made in a year. Margaret herself sat behind a desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of dark wood. Her attention focused on her computer screen until the receptionist announced Lucas. "Lucas, come in. Sit down." Margaret gestured to a chair across from her desk. "How are you feeling?" "Like I can breathe for the first time in a week." "Good. That's exactly how you should feel." Margaret closed her laptop and gave Lucas her full attention. "I asked you here because I have a proposition for you. I mentioned it briefly after the hearing, but I want to lay out the specifics now that the custody matter is resolved." "I'm listening." "Morrison Dynamics has a problem. Well, several problems, but one in particular that relates to you. We have brilliant people in every department, engineers, designers, researchers, but we don't have enough people who notice the small things, who think about how systems actually function in practice rather than just in theory. We need people who can spot a water leak before it becomes a flood, who can identify security risks before they become breaches, who understand that excellence is in the details. Lucas shifted uncomfortably. I'm not sure what this has to do with me. It has everything to do with you. For 2 years, you've been demonstrating exactly those qualities. You found Dr. Chen's laptop and tracked her down instead of just turning it into security. You reported a water leak that saved our server room. You flagged a stolen security badge that prevented industrial espionage. Those aren't the actions of someone who just cleans offices, Lucas. Those are the actions of someone who thinks critically, solves problems, and takes initiative. I just did what seemed right. Exactly. And that instinct to do what's right even when it's inconvenient, even when there's no immediate reward, that's rare. I want to hire you for a new position I'm creating. It's called Facilities Operations Manager. You'd oversee all our building operations, maintenance, security, vendor relationships, safety protocols. You'd be the person who makes sure all the small details are handled before they become big problems. Lucas stared at her. I don't have a college degree. I don't have any management experience. You have 2 years of demonstrated excellence in noticing what others miss. You have integrity and work ethic. The rest, you can learn. Margaret slid a folder across the desk. This is the job description and the salary offer. Take a look. Lucas opened the folder with trembling hands. The salary figure jumped out at him. $65,000 annually, plus benefits. Health insurance, retirement matching, paid time off. It was nearly double what he made working 80 hours a week at 2 jobs. This can't be real, Lucas said quietly. It's very real. You'd work normal business hours, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. No more night shifts. No more exhausting yourself trying to make ends meet. You'd have evenings and weekends with Emma. You could take her to school every morning and pick her up every afternoon. Lucas felt tears prick his eyes. Why would you do this for me? I'm not doing it for you, Lucas. I'm doing it for Morrison Dynamics. I need someone in this role who actually cares about doing things right. Someone who won't cut corners or ignore problems because they're inconvenient. You've proven you're that person. Margaret leaned forward. But I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a personal element. I believe in recognizing and rewarding merit. You've shown more character and dedication in 2 years of night shifts than most people show in entire careers. You deserve a chance to use those qualities in a position where they'll be properly valued. What about Vanessa? Won't this create problems, having her ex-husband working for the same company? Vanessa works on the 32nd floor in a completely different division. You'd rarely interact, and frankly, if she has a problem with it, that's her issue to manage, not yours. I don't make hiring decisions based on office politics. Margaret's expression hardened slightly. Besides, Vanessa and I had a conversation after the custody hearing. She understands that her position here depends on her maintaining professional standards. What happened in that courtroom was a wake-up call for her. She won't cause problems. Lucas looked down at the job description, at the list of responsibilities that seemed both overwhelming and somehow within his reach. He thought about what this would mean. No more night shifts, no more missing Emma's bedtime, no more exhaustion that made everything harder than it had to be. He could pick Emma up from school every day. He could help with homework while he was actually awake and alert. He could take her to the park on weekends instead of sleeping because he'd worked 70 hours during the week. I don't know what to say, Lucas admitted. Say yes. Start in 2 weeks. That gives you time to give notice at your current jobs and to adjust Emma to the new schedule. Margaret pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. This is Sarah Morrison, our head of HR. She'll handle all the onboarding paperwork. Call her tomorrow. Sarah Morrison? Is she related to Judge Morrison? Margaret smiled. Her daughter. Patricia told Sarah about your case. In general terms, nothing that violated confidentiality. Sarah was impressed by your story. She's looking forward to working with you. Lucas took the card, his hand still shaking. This was too much, too good. After 3 years of struggling, of fighting for every small victory, it felt impossible that his life could change this dramatically. There's one condition, Margaret said, her tone becoming more serious. Lucas's heart sank. Of course there was a condition. Nothing came without strings attached. You have to promise me that you'll finish your degree. You had 2 semesters left of your engineering program when you dropped out to take care of Emma. Morrison has a tuition reimbursement program. You can take evening classes, finish your degree. It'll take a few years, but you'll do it. I don't know if I can manage work and school and Emma. You've been managing two jobs and Emma. You can manage one job and one class per semester. And Lucas, you're smart. You should have the credentials to match that intelligence. Don't let Vanessa's choices 3 years ago define the rest of your life. Finish what you started. Lucas thought about those 2 semesters, about the engineering degree he'd been so close to completing before Emma was born, and Vanessa left, and survival became more important than education. Could he really go back? Could he balance work and school and being the father Emma needed? I'll think about it, he said finally. Good. Now go. You probably need to get to your hospital shift. Margaret stood, extending her hand. Welcome to Morrison Dynamics, Lucas. I look forward to seeing what you accomplish. Lucas shook her hand, still somewhat dazed, and left her office in a fog of disbelief. In the elevator, he looked at the business card Sarah Morrison had given him, at the folder with the job description and salary offer, at the possibility of a future that looked nothing like the struggle he'd been living. He made it to his hospital shift 15 minutes late, apologized to his supervisor, and worked through the lunch rush in the cafeteria, feeling like he was moving through a dream. His coworker Maria noticed. You okay, Lucas? You seem distracted. I got a job offer, a real one, with benefits and normal hours and enough money that I won't have to work nights anymore. Maria's face lit up. Lucas, that's amazing. Are you going to take it? I think so. I mean, yes. Yes, I'm taking it. Saying it out loud made it real. Lucas Reed, who'd spent 3 years cleaning offices and serving food and barely making rent, was going to be a facilities operations manager. He was going to work business hours and have health insurance and be able to pick up his daughter from school every single day. He gave his 2 weeks' notice that afternoon, and his supervisor, a kind woman named Patricia, who'd always been understanding about Lucas's chaotic schedule, congratulated him with genuine warmth. He did the same at the cleaning company that evening, and while his supervisor there was less pleased about losing a reliable employee, even he grudgingly admitted it was a good opportunity. Lucas picked up Emma from Mrs. Chen's apartment at 9 p.m., later than usual because he'd had to work both shifts. How was your day, Daddy? Pretty incredible, actually. Come on, let's go home. I have something to tell you. In their small apartment, Emma settled on the sofa bed with Dr. Peanuts while Lucas sat beside her. Remember how I had to go to that important meeting this morning? Well, it was a job interview, sort of, and I got offered a new job. A new job? But you already have 2 jobs. I'm going to quit both of those jobs and take this new one. It pays better, and I'll only work during the day, which means I can pick you up from school every afternoon. Emma's eyes went wide. Every afternoon? Even Tuesdays and Thursdays? Every single afternoon, and I'll be home for dinner every night, and on weekends I won't be so tired anymore. Emma threw her arms around him. Daddy, that's the best news ever. Does this mean we're not poor anymore? The question hit Lucas in the chest. He hadn't realized Emma thought of them as poor, though of course she did. She was smart enough to understand that they had less than other families, that Lucas worked constantly and they still had to be careful with money. We're going to be more comfortable, Lucas said carefully. We'll still have to be smart with money, but we won't have to worry as much. Maybe we can even save up for a bigger apartment. I don't want a bigger apartment. I like this one. It's ours. Emma pulled back to look at him seriously. But maybe we could get a door for the bathroom instead of a curtain. That would be nice. Lucas laughed, pulling her close again. Yeah, sweetheart. We can definitely get a door for the bathroom. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of transitions. Lucas worked his final shifts at both jobs, said goodbye to coworkers who'd become friends, and completed the onboarding process at Morrison Dynamics. Sarah Morrison turned out to be as kind as her mother, walking Lucas through benefits enrollment and answering his questions with patience. Your daughter must be excited about the new schedule, Sarah said during one of their meetings. She's already planned out everything we're going to do with all the extra time. Apparently there's a lot of parks we need to visit, and several library branches we haven't explored yet. That's wonderful. Patricia told me a little about your case, just the broad strokes. She was very impressed by you. I was terrified of your mother. She's intimidating, Sarah laughed. She is, but she's also the fairest person I know. If she ruled in your favor, it's because you deserved it. Lucas's first day at Morrison Dynamics felt surreal. He wore new clothes, a button-down shirt and slacks that Sarah had helped him pick out, explaining the company's business casual dress code. He had an office, small, but his own, with a desk and a computer and a window that looked out over the city. He had a nameplate that said Lucas Reed Facilities Operations Manager. The work was challenging but manageable. Lucas spent his first week learning the building systems, meeting with vendors, reviewing safety protocols. He discovered that his years of cleaning offices had given him an intimate knowledge of how the building actually functioned, which elevators were slow, which restrooms had temperamental plumbing, which areas had the best and worst climate control. His new team, a group of maintenance workers and security personnel, were skeptical at first. Lucas had been one of them until recently, and now he was their manager. But he won them over through the same qualities that had impressed Margaret. He listened to their concerns, he solved problems, he remembered details, and he never asked them to do anything he wouldn't do himself. At 3:15 every afternoon, Lucas left work to pick up Emma from school. The first time he arrived at the usual time, but in business clothes instead of his hospital uniform, Emma did a double take. "Daddy, you look fancy." "I look professional. There's a difference." "You look fancy professional, like you're going to a meeting with the president." They walked home together, and Lucas marveled at having the energy to actually listen to Emma's school stories instead of fighting exhaustion. They stopped at the park because they could, because Lucas didn't have to rush home to sleep before a night shift. Emma played on the swings while Lucas sat on a bench and watched, and for the first time in 3 years, he felt like he could breathe deeply. That evening, over dinner, real dinner, cooked fresh because Lucas had time to actually cook, Emma told him about her day in exhaustive detail. Lucas listened to every word, asked follow-up questions, helped her with homework afterward, while he was alert enough to actually be helpful. At bedtime, after 3 stories and lights out, Emma said something that made Lucas's throat tight. "Daddy, I like this better. When you're not so tired all the time." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." The weeks turned into months. Lucas settled into his new job, exceeding expectations and earning respect from colleagues who'd initially doubted him. He saved money for the first time in years, not much, but enough that he had a real emergency fund instead of hoping nothing went wrong. He found a new apartment, not in Lincoln Park, but in a safer neighborhood with better schools, a 2-bedroom with an actual door on the bathroom, and space for Emma to have her own room. "Are you sure?" Emma asked when he showed it to her. "It costs more money." "We can afford it now, and you deserve your own space." They moved in February, on a cold Saturday with Mrs. Chen directing the movers, 2 guys from Lucas's building who he'd paid to help. Emma's new room was small, but hers, and she spent hours arranging her stuffed animals, and her books, and her space posters. "Daddy, come look," she called, and Lucas found her standing in the middle of her room with her arms spread wide. "I have my own room, like a real room, with a door that closes and everything." "You like it?" "I love it. But Daddy, can you still read me 3 stories at bedtime, even though I have my own room now?" "Every single night. That's never going to change." In March, Lucas enrolled in one evening class at the community college, Engineering Fundamentals, picking up where he'd left off 3 years ago. It was hard, juggling work and parenting and studying, but it was manageable in a way it never would have been when he was working 80 hours a week. Emma helped him study sometimes, quizzing him on vocabulary words she didn't understand but read with perfect diction. "What's thermodynamics, Daddy?" "It's the study of heat and energy and how they move through systems." "That sounds hard." "It is hard, but worth it." Vanessa started her supervised visitation in April. The reunification program had been difficult for her. Lucas heard this secondhand from Jennifer, who stayed in touch to make sure the transition went smoothly. Vanessa had to attend parenting classes, work with a therapist on rebuilding her relationship with Emma, and accept that she was essentially starting from scratch with a daughter who barely knew her. The first few visits were awkward. Emma was polite but distant, treating Vanessa like a friendly stranger rather than her mother. But Vanessa showed up every other weekend without fail, and slowly, tentatively, they began to build something. It wasn't the instant bond Vanessa had probably hoped for, but it was real progress. "Mommy took me to the planetarium," Emma reported after one visit. "She said she remembered I like space. She asked a lot of questions about what I want to be when I grow up. That's good. It's good that she's trying. She cried a little. When we were leaving, she said she was sorry she missed so much. Emma looked up at Lucas with those wise eyes that seemed too old for a 7-year-old. I told her it's okay, that you've been taking care of me and we're doing fine. Was that the right thing to say? That was perfect, sweetheart. You're allowed to be honest about your feelings. By summer, Lucas had completed his first class with an A and enrolled in 2 more for fall. Emma finished 2nd grade at the top of her class, her teacher noting in her report card that she was exceptionally bright, curious, and well-adjusted. They spent summer weekends at museums and parks, sometimes joined by Mrs. Chen, who'd become more family than neighbor. In August, Margaret called Lucas to her office. "How are you settling in?" she asked. "Really well. I think I'm actually getting the hang of this. More than that, you've reduced our facilities costs by 15% while improving response times and safety ratings. You've implemented new protocols that other divisions are asking to copy. Lucas, you're exceeding every expectation I had, and I had high expectations." "Thank you. I'm just trying to do the job well." "You're doing more than the job. You're improving the entire operation." Margaret pulled out another folder. "Which is why I'd like to offer you a promotion, Director of Facilities Operations. It comes with a substantial raise and expanded responsibilities. What do you think?" Lucas thought about how far he'd come in 9 months, from a janitor barely making rent to a director at a major corporation, from a father terrified of losing his daughter to a man with custody, stability, and a future. "I think I'd be honored to accept." "Good. We'll make it official next month." Margaret smiled. "You know, when I first noticed you 2 years ago, I saw someone who did excellent work in a role that others dismiss as unimportant. I wondered what you could accomplish if given a real opportunity. I'm glad I got to find out. I'm glad you took a chance on me." "It wasn't a chance, Lucas. It was a calculated bet on someone who'd already proven their worth. And it's paying off exactly as I predicted." That evening, Lucas made Emma's favorite dinner, dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets and roasted carrots that she'd actually eat, and told her about the promotion. "Does that mean more money?" Emma asked. "It does." "Can we get a telescope? A really good one, not just the one we have, but one where I can see the rings of Saturn?" Lucas had been saving for exactly that. "I think we can make that happen." Emma's shriek of joy made Mrs. Chen knock on the wall between their apartments. "Sorry!" Lucas called, laughing. They set up the telescope on their small balcony that night, and Lucas showed Emma how to align it, how to find planets in the night sky. They found Jupiter first, its bands visible even through light pollution. Then Mars, a rust-colored point that made Emma gasp with wonder. "Daddy, I can see it. I can actually see another planet." "You can, and someday maybe you'll visit them." "When I'm an astronaut?" "When you're an astronaut." Emma leaned against him as they stood looking at the stars. "Daddy, are we happy now?" "Yes, sweetheart. We're very happy." "Good, because I was thinking, we've been through some hard stuff, but we're okay now. We're better than okay." Lucas wrapped his arm around her shoulders. This brilliant daughter who understood far more than most 7-year-olds should have to understand. She was right. They'd been through hard stuff, poverty, custody battles, uncertainty about the future, but they'd come through it together, stronger for the struggle. In October, Lucas ran into Vanessa in the Morrison Dynamics lobby. They hadn't spoken directly since the custody hearing, communicating only through Jennifer about visitation schedules. She looked the same, polished, professional, confident in her expensive clothes and perfect hair. But something in her expression was different, softer, maybe, more uncertain. "Lucas." "Hi." "Vanessa." They stood in awkward silence for a moment. Finally, Vanessa spoke. "I heard about your promotion. Congratulations." "Thank you." "Emma told me about the telescope you bought her. She talked about Saturn's rings for 20 minutes during our last visit." Vanessa's smile was tentative. "She's an amazing kid." "Yes, she is." "You've done an incredible job raising her. Vanessa's voice caught. "I'm sorry for everything, for leaving, for the custody battle, for not recognizing what I was giving up until it was too late." Lucas studied her face, looking for manipulation or calculation, but all he saw was genuine regret. I appreciate that. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm trying, with the visits. I'm really trying to be the mother she deserves. I can see that. Emma's told me how you've been showing up, asking questions, learning about her interests. Lucas paused. Keep doing that. Keep being consistent. That's what she needs. I will, I promise. Vanessa blinked back tears. She's lucky to have you, Lucas. I was an idiot not to see that years ago. She has both of us now. Different roles, but we're both in her life. Thank you for letting me be part of it, even after everything. They parted ways, and Lucas felt something shift inside him. Not forgiveness exactly, but the beginning of something that might become forgiveness eventually. Vanessa was trying. That had to count for something. December came with the first real snow, and Lucas took Emma ice skating at Millennium Park. She fell constantly, laughing every time, insisting on getting back up. Lucas held her hands and helped her glide across the ice, and watching her determination reminded him of where they'd been a year ago, standing in a courthouse, fighting for their right to stay together. Christmas was different this year. Lucas could afford presents without maxing out credit cards. He bought Emma the complete set of space exploration books she'd been wanting, a new winter coat because she'd outgrown the old one, and art supplies because she'd developed an interest in painting nebulae. But the best gift was time. A whole week off from work that Lucas spent entirely with Emma, visiting museums and watching movies and building an elaborate Lego space station that took over their living room. On Christmas evening, after Emma was asleep, Lucas sat in their quiet apartment and took stock of everything that had changed in 1 year. A year ago, he'd been a janitor working 2 jobs, terrified of losing his daughter, living in a studio apartment with a curtain for a bathroom door. Now he was a director at a major corporation, had a 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood, was taking college classes again, and had full custody of his daughter with a peaceful co-parenting arrangement with his ex-wife. It felt like someone else's life, like he'd stepped through a door into a different reality. But it was his life. He'd earned it through years of showing up, working hard, doing the right thing even when it was difficult. Margaret had given him an opportunity, but Lucas had proven he deserved it. New Year's Eve found Lucas and Emma on their balcony with the telescope, counting down to midnight while searching for constellations. "Make a wish, Daddy," Emma said as fireworks exploded over the city. Lucas looked at his daughter, healthy, happy, secure in the knowledge that she was loved and safe, and realized he didn't need to wish for anything. Everything he wanted, everything that mattered, was already here. "What did you wish for?" Emma asked. "That things stay exactly as good as they are right now." "That's a boring wish. I wished for a trip to space camp and also maybe a puppy." Lucas laughed. "Those are much better wishes." "I know. I'm good at wishing." Emma snuggled against his side. "But Daddy, I'm glad things are good now. I like not having to worry about you being so tired all the time." "Me too, sweetheart." They stood together watching fireworks paint the sky, and Lucas thought about the journey that had brought them here. The fear, the struggle, the moment in a courtroom when his entire future hung in the balance. The kindness of strangers who became allies. Margaret with her unexpected support. Jennifer with her fierce advocacy. Mrs. Chen with her steady presence. He thought about the folder he'd carried into that first meeting with Vanessa. The documents meant to erase him from Emma's life. He'd refused to sign them, had fought instead, and that choice had changed everything. Sometimes the system worked. Sometimes judges saw past money to what actually mattered. Sometimes hard work was recognized and rewarded. Sometimes single fathers who cleaned offices at night got second chances to become something more. Lucas Reed had always been more than his job title or his bank balance. He'd always been a father who showed up, who knew his daughter's fears and dreams, who put her first every single day. The difference now was that the world recognized that worth, valued it, made space for it to flourish. In his pocket, Lucas still carried the business card Margaret had given him that rainy day when everything changed. He pulled it out now, looking at it in the light of the fireworks, and thought about how a single conversation in a limousine had set in motion events that transformed his entire life. Tomorrow, he'd go back to work, a job he was good at, that challenged him, that paid enough for comfort and security. He'd continue his classes, working toward the degree he'd interrupted years ago. He'd pick up Emma from school and help with homework, and read 3 bedtime stories. But tonight, standing on their balcony with his daughter beside him and the city spread out below like a promise, Lucas Reed allowed himself to simply be grateful for second chances, for people who saw potential where others saw only limitations, for judges who understood that love mattered more than money, for a daughter who'd never doubted him, even when he doubted himself. "Happy New Year, Daddy," Emma said, hugging him tight. "Happy New Year, sweetheart. I love you more than all the stars." "That's still a lot of stars. That's still exactly how much I love you." They went inside as the last of the fireworks faded, Emma already planning tomorrow's activities, Lucas already looking forward to every ordinary, extraordinary moment of the life they'd built together. A life that had almost been taken away, but had instead become more full and rich than Lucas had ever dared to imagine. He tucked Emma into bed in her own room, a room with a door and space for her dreams, and kissed her forehead. "Daddy?" Emma's voice was sleepy. "Are you happy?" "So happy I can barely stand it." "Good. You deserve to be happy. You're the best daddy in the whole world." "And you're the best daughter. Sleep well," Emma rose. Lucas closed her door gently and walked back to the living room. On his small desk, the one he used for college assignments, sat his textbooks and notes, evidence of the future he was building. On the refrigerator hung Emma's latest drawing, a family portrait that showed Lucas and Emma holding hands under a sky full of stars, both of them smiling. This was his life now. Not perfect, but good. Not easy, but manageable. Not what he'd planned 7 years ago when he'd held his newborn daughter and promised to always be there for her. It was better. Because Lucas Reed had learned that showing up mattered, that character counted. That love, real love that showed up every single day regardless of circumstance, was the most valuable thing a person could give. He'd shown up for Emma every day for 7 years. And finally, gloriously, the world had shown up for him in return. Lucas turned off the lights and went to bed, falling asleep almost immediately for the first time in years. He slept deeply, dreamlessly, the sleep of a man who'd fought his battles and won, who'd proven his worth and been recognized for it, who'd loved fiercely and been loved in return. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new moments to prove himself. But tonight, Lucas Reed rested in the certainty that he was exactly where he belonged, doing exactly what he was meant to do, with exactly the person who mattered most sleeping safely in the next room. And that was enough. That was everything.